Chapter 1731. Purely from an aesthetic point of view. The show was indeed good. Record it and send it to me. I'll study it. Actually, Chen Zhao didn't think that Tamamo could cause any trouble. Times were different now. If Tamamo wanted to continue doing whatever she wanted, in the end, it would be difficult for them to escape the fate of being destroyed or sealed. In the first round, Chen Zhao and Tamamo no Mei couldn't do anything to each other. But it didn't mean that Tamamo was immortal. Chen Zhao didn't even dare to say that he was immortal. Humans hadn't found a way to kill her yet. But it didn't mean that they couldn't. Plus, humans had ultimate weapons. Chen Zhao estimated that he could withstand the explosion of a nuclear weapon with the equivalent of 10,000 tons of TNT now. But if humans were determined to destroy something, 100,000 tons, 1,000,000 tons, or even 10 million tons were possible. After all, decades ago, the former Russia had created a nuclear weapon with a yield of 100 million tons, Big Ivan. The current level of technology was many times higher than it was a few decades ago. This was no longer a world of monsters. It was ruled by humans. Even if Tamamo was hiding in a crowded city, humans would kill without caring about the casualties. That day in the forest of Greenwood Plains, Tamamo realized that something was wrong and immediately flew away. This meant that she wasn't a mindless monster. She was smarter than most monsters and even more intelligent than most humans. So, Chen Zhao didn't think that she would cause a huge commotion. A heavy downpour completely washed the entire Tokyo. Hundreds of thousands of tons of volcanic ash were washed into the sewers. The entire city looked brand new. The citizens and tourists who had been suppressed for almost a week finally released their strong desire to shop. All the malls, supermarkets, restaurants, and even bars were filled with people. People enjoyed shopping like crazy, as if they were celebrating a festival. Zhang Tianyi strolled in the Japanese palace, the East Imperial Garden. This was the modern royal residence. A royal servant followed beside Zhang Tianyi. The outer area of the Imperial Garden was for tourists. However, the inner area wasn't open to the public. Just then, a man in hunting clothes walked out. The man's makeup was slightly feminine. He held a folding fan in his hand. He was a member of the royal family, Minamiya. In Japan, the Minamiya and the Abe family were known as the two heroes of Japan. They had both risen during the Heian era and had been worshipped by the royal family for generations. Greetings, celestial teacher Zhang. Minamiya had a high status, but he couldn't be arrogant before Zhang Tianyi. Of course, even though Zhang Tianyi had a high status, the current emperor of Japan wouldn't see him. Minamiya was the best person to meet and receive him. Hello, Mr. Minamiya. Zhang Tianyi had a smile on his face. This time, I'm here mainly to return your royal family's national treasure. Yuan Minamiya was stunned and looked at Zhang Tianyi in astonishment. Celestial teacher, what? The Yasukov Magatov of Japan of Z. How can we do that? We promised it to the heavenly master. Celestial to of the emperor of to you. He. Of hand, he. Genomiya was obviously happy that the Yasukov Magatov of the emperor had returned to the emperor. Of course, he still had to make excuses on the surface. Genomiya opened the brocade box. Seeing the Yasukov Magatov inside, he was even more assured. If Zhang Tianyi didn't return the Yasukov Magatov, he might have to wait for a few more years. After Zhang Tianyi reached the end of his life, he could ask for it back through political means. Just then, a wave of demonic aura spread over. Zhang Tianyi and Genomiya's expressions changed drastically. Zhang Tianyi looked at Genomiya. Where did the demonic aura come from? Genomiya's face was also filled with astonishment. This was the imperial palace where the royal family lived. It was impossible for a monster to come in. Just then, a figure flashed past at an extremely fast speed. Oh no! Zhang Tianyi slapped out. The figure was sent flying. A strange look flashed across Zhang Tianyi's eyes. It wasn't Chen Zhao. It was a fox demon, a white fox. Then 9 more foxes jumped out. They surrounded Zhang Tianyi and Genemia. A woman flew through the air. Of course, it was Tamamo no Mei. Tamamo no Mei was still barefoot, and her clothes were extravagant. One of the foxes flew past. Before Genemia could react, Tamamo no Mei snatched the brocade box. Is this the new palace? Has the imperial family already weakened to such a degree? Tamamo no Mei looked around the imperial palace as she held a brocade box in her hand. Demon, leave the Yasakov Magatov here. Zhang Tianyi shouted. Little old man, you're too weak. Tamamo no Mei waved her hand, and a wave of demonic aura surged over. Zhang Tianyi pulled Genemia over and shielded him behind him. Tamamo no Mei waved her hand, and the 9 foxes circled around her. Then he looked into the depths of the imperial palace. Found it. Tamamo no Mei flew out. Oh no, heavenly teacher, stop her. Genemia paled in fright. What is that place? That's where the Yada no Kagami and Kusanagi sword are kept. Zhang Tianyi was also shocked. He immediately charged out. Just then, a figure flew in front of Zhang Tianyi and blocked him. A few strands of Zhang Tianyi's hair were cut off. Zhang Tianyi immediately retreated. Looking closely, he saw that Chen Zhao had come. Both of them were making eye contact. Demon, get lost. Otherwise, I'll teach you a lesson. Zhang Tianyi shouted. Don't even think of stopping my master's great plan. Take this. Zhang Tianyi immediately stood together with the white-faced ghost that Chen Zhao had turned into. Chen Zhao, what's going on? Tamamo no Mei has nothing to do with me, Chen Zhao said in a low voice. I didn't expect her to show up either, but this is good. I can blame it on her. But that peerless demon fox wants to snatch the Yada no mirror and the Kusanagi sword. If these 2 divine weapons were to fall into her hands, the consequences would be unimaginable. Who cares? Chen Zhao didn't care. He just needed to prove Tamamo no Mei's crime. Whether Tamamo no Mei snatched the Yada no Kagami and the Kusanagi sword had nothing to do with him. At this time, Tamamo no Mei rushed into the treasury hall. The defensive formation in the treasury hall collapsed upon contact. In just a few seconds, Tamamo no Mei broke through the roof with the Yada mirror and Kusanagi sword. Children, let's go. Chen Zhao immediately separated from Zhang Tianyi and chased after Tamamo no Mei. When Tamamo no Mei saw Chen Zhao, she was stunned at first, but then she smiled charmingly. 9 Heavens, Divine Emperor. Chapter 1732. In the blink of an eye, Chen Zhao and Tamamo no Mei had disappeared from Tokyo. Chen Zhao, we meet again. How do you know my name? Your hotel is registered, Tamamo no Mei said. You've changed your way of speaking. It's so stupid to talk like that again, Tamamo no Mei said. How did you appear there? Wait, let me guess. Tamamo no Mei suddenly stopped Chen Zhao. She thought for a moment. You used that old man as the intermediary and took the Yasakani no Magatama as payment. The condition was to destroy me, and you were afraid that the royal family would go back on their word and find you, so you put on a show with that old man. Tamamo no Mei paused and thought for a moment. I just happened to appear, so you and him planned to blame me? Chen Zhao smiled at Tamamo no Mei. How did this fox's brain work? Tamamo no Mei took out a brocade box and took out the fake Yasakani no Magatama. She looked left and right and then grabbed it. Without much effort, she crushed it. So it's fake. Tamamo no Mei waved her hand and tossed the powder away. Since I took the blame for you, shouldn't you give me some benefits? For example, the Yasakani no Magatama. No. Chen Zhao shrugged. I did the same thing you did to the real thing. Tamamo no Mei looked at him. You solved the secret of the Yasakani no Magatama? Oh, apparently Amaterasu from Japan is a god. Your method is very similar to that. It seems that you really solved the secret of the Yasakani no Magatama. How about sharing it with me? After all, I took the blame for you. No way. Chun Zhao rejected Tamamonome's request without hesitation. Tamamonome was already so difficult to deal with now. If she knew the secret of the Yasakani no Magatama, she would definitely be even more difficult to deal with. Then I'll tell the Japanese government about your plan. Tamamonome suddenly stopped. Oh right, no one will believe me. Give me either the Yasakani no Magatama or the Kusanagi no Me, and I'll share the secret of the Yasakani no Magatama with you. Hee, don't even think about it. Tamamonome refused decisively. She had snatched the Yada, no Kagami, and Kusanagi, sword to guard against Chun Zhao. After all, Chun Zhao's black trident was too much of a threat to her. If Chun Zhao took out his black trident the next time they fought, he might really be killed. This was why Tamamonome wanted to unravel the secret of the 3 divine artifacts. And Chun Zhao already knew the secret of the Yasakani no Magatama. If he obtained another divine artifact and was able to decipher it, then he would be in even more danger. You want to use Kusanagi's sword and Yada no Kagami to deal with me? That's right. Tamamonome didn't plan on hiding it. After all, it was too obvious. In this world, there was no one who could threaten her. Chun Zhao was the only one left. If he didn't have any means to protect himself, she really felt insecure. Tamamonome took out the Kusanagi no Tsurugi, even though she did not decipher the Kusanagi no Tsurugi. However, she could still feel that this was an invincible divine sword. It might not even be weaker than Chun Zhao's black trident. Tamamonome's jade-like hand gently stroked the ancient blade. Do you want to try what it feels like to be cut by it? Chun Zhao's teeth hurt. He shouldn't have let her take the Kusanagi sword so easily. He felt a long-lost threat from the Kusanagi sword. If it really cut his body, he might really be injured. Let's not fight. We don't have to kill each other, right? Chun Zhao took out the black trident. Although he said he wouldn't fight, he still felt that he needed the black trident to feel safe. Okay, put it away first. You're making me feel very insecure with this thing. You're the one who feels insecure, Chun Zhao said. Put away the Kusanagi sword first. You're a fox demon. You make me shiver with the Kusanagi sword. Why are you so loud? I know people like you only think about subduing demons, right? Put down your weapon, or I won't go easy on you. You're the one who should put down your weapon. Hurry up and put down your weapon. Chun Zhao raised his voice too. No one was willing to put down their weapons, but no one planned on fighting. They were just shooting their mouths at each other. They were both wary of each other. In the end, they retreated cautiously. Chun Zhao didn't plan on taking the Kusanagi sword and the Yada no Kagami. It was mainly because they were too troublesome. After all, Tamamonome had been snatched from the Japanese royal family's nest. It was 100 times riskier than the Yasakani no Magatama. At least the Yasakani no Magatama had been traded in a proper way. But the Kusanagi sword and the Yada no Kagami no Magatama had been snatched. They felt hot in his hands. Chun Zhao didn't plan on sharing the pressure with Tamamonome. West had booked a plane and chartered it. They would fly to Los Angeles at noon tomorrow. The matter in Japan had also come to an end. But this time, the original Scarlet mission could be considered a complete failure. No one from the association had a chance to do anything. Fortunately, Chun Zhao and West hadn't been careless. If one day the people from the association were to get involved, not to mention how useful they would be, at least they wouldn't be able to avoid losses. The news of the attack on the royal family's residence hadn't been leaked. Even the spiritual world didn't know. The impact of this matter was too great. After all, the Yada no Kagami, Kusanagi no Magatama, and Yasakani no Magatama were the national treasures of Japan. But now, all 3 had fallen into Tamamonome's hands. If this matter were to spread out, everyone would definitely be in a state of panic. It would be a huge blow to both the public and the spiritual world. So, the royal family could only use the 3 fakes for now. Anyway, The three divine artifacts didn't have much use. They were more symbolic than practical. So, as long as they were in the royal family's hands, they were real. If they fell into someone else's hands, even the real ones would become fakes. Finally, Chen Zhao boarded the flight home. He lowered his head and looked at Tokyo, which was getting further and further away. Every Chinese had complicated feelings about Japan, especially those at Chen Zhao's age. This was especially true for people his age, because he had grown up watching anti-Japanese dramas and Japanese comics. But to Chen Zhao, Japan had nothing to do with him. Chen Zhao didn't plan on sinking Japan either. He didn't want to come back to Japan either. Tamamo, no Mei was really a dangerous woman. Whether it was her power, her intelligence, or the divine weapon in her hand, Chen Zhao felt a sense of danger. President, we plan to go to Norway in a week, West said, walking to Chen Zhao's side. Huh? So urgent? Do you need me to go with you? Chen Zhao asked. 9 Heavens God King. Chapter 1733. President, you shouldn't go. If you go, we won't have to go. I just want to watch, Chen Zhao said, pursing his lips. Plus, I've never been to Norway. President, you shouldn't go. Whether Chen Zhao went or not, whether he was there or not, were two completely different concepts. Fine. Actually, I just want to see Norway's scenery. After booking the entire flight, everyone had much more freedom on the plane. Portia was extremely impressed by Feilai. She took care of 2 kids by herself. Both little Jerlin and little Larissa were extremely noisy. Ever since they got on the plane, they hadn't been quiet. Chen Zhao didn't care at all. The 2 of them could do whatever they wanted to. Only Feilai would restrain them. However, Portia was more concerned about Chen Zhao's subordinates. All this time, Portia had thought that Chen Zhao was a gang leader. But after seeing Chen Zhao's subordinates, she realized that they didn't seem to have anything to do with gangs. They weren't gangs. For example, Klaus and the Lightning Squad. In the beginning, he looked like a gang killer. But soon, she realized that Klaus and the others were just old-fashioned. After all, they'd stayed under the same roof for a long time. She realized that Klaus and the others were more like retired soldiers. As for the others, there were old people, children, and women. They had no discipline or rules. They looked more like a big family. They didn't look like a gang with a clear hierarchy. So, she was even more curious. What exactly did they do? It was as if all kinds of strange people were mixed together. They didn't look like gangs or a company. Portia even felt that they weren't from the same company. They were more like friends traveling together. But she'd seen Chen Zhao, West, and a few others discussing something in the house. They were indeed showing the attitude of subordinates. West, what do you think about getting a plane? Chen Zhao asked. We have so many people. If we want to get a plane, it can't be small. President, do you want to buy it yourself or the association? West asked. I can pay too. I've made a lot of money recently, Chen Zhao said. But where do we keep the plane? Is it stored at the airport? I do have a way to get the construction permit for a civil airport. But even the construction of the lowest grade airport requires a lot of money. Don't think that an airport is just a runway and a parking apron. The runway of the airport was not an ordinary road. Even the road conditions of the expressway could not be compared to it. If a medium or large aircraft were to land and take off on an ordinary plane, it would directly cause an accident. Regardless of whether the plane was taking off or landing, the weight and speed of the plane would create a huge pressure. Ordinary roads simply couldn't withstand this kind of pressure, and the final result was damage to the road. Once the road was damaged, the debris or potholes would directly cause the plane's tires to burst. At that time, the control of the plane would be lost, and the final result would be the destruction of the plane and the deaths of the passengers. Therefore, the cost of building a runway was tens or even hundreds of times that of a normal road. An ordinary highway would cost 100 kilometers, while a runway would only cost 1 kilometer. There were also parking aprons and aircraft warehouses that required high prices. Even the most ordinary private airport would require at least $1 billion US. Moreover, the most ordinary airports couldn't accommodate large planes. Of course, the most expensive part was still the land. However, the land problem was the easiest for Qin Zhao and the supernatural organization to solve. The supernatural organization's headquarters was large enough to build a private airport. Do an estimate and see how much it'll cost if I want to build a private airport. Okay, West saw that Chen Zhao had made up his mind, so he didn't stop him. But we're not professionals in building a private airport. I don't know how much it'll cost. President, don't you know an engineering company? Ask them. He knew Qin Zhao's assets quite well. This was because of the high return rate of Dashenbeer. Last month, Dashenbeer's production had increased. This caused the value of Dashenbeer and even Qin Zhao's assets to skyrocket. At the same time, Qin Zhao's monthly income even exceeded $80 million US. Therefore, it wasn't a problem to build a private airport and by a private plane. The organization didn't have that much money, but it was also a good thing for Qin Zhao to have a private plane and airport. They needed a plane, so Chen Zhao couldn't say no. That's true. Qin Zhao nodded. Chen Zhao found Felwood Cisco's number. Hello, Mr. Felwood. Hello, Mr. Chen. Do you want to ask about the progress of the Mirror Lake project? No, I want to ask if your engineering company has the ability to build a private airport? Chen Zhao asked. Qin Zhao wasn't asking if they had the ability, but if they had the ability. He wasn't sure if there were any technical difficulties in building an airport. Mr. Qin, you want to build a private airport? Yes, I plan to buy 1 or 2 private planes. They should be medium or large ones, but it's too troublesome to store them in a civil airport, so I plan to build a private airport in my territory. That's why I'm asking if you have the ability. Yes. Felwood Cisco realized that his company didn't want any clients. He only needed Qin Zhao as a client. In the past 2 years, how many projects had Chen Zhao provided him? It was already over $100 million US, right? Chen Zhao's wealth had also exceeded his imagination. There aren't any technical difficulties. Mr. Qin, there aren't any technical difficulties in building an airport, Felwood Cisco explained patiently. However, the runway isn't made of regular concrete. It's a special high-strength cement. Most of the money for building an airport is spent on this cement. Building an airport. This was building an airport. Even a small airport was a huge project for his company. Give me a budget, Qin Zhao said. I'll evaluate it. Okay, Mr. Qin. Felwood suppressed his excitement. Oh, don't be careless with the Mirror Lake project. Build it as you should. There's no need to rush. The earliest construction for the private airport will start next year. There were only 2 months left until the new year. Even if they decided to build a private airport, it would take at least a few months of preparation. 9 Heavens, Divine Emperor. Chapter 1734. I'm finally in Los Angeles. Qin Zhao let out a long sigh. This journey was so tiring. When Chen Zhao walked out of the exit, he saw Vestana and the others. He immediately went up to greet them. Ms. Vestana, how are you? When Vestana saw Qin Zhao, she couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. This guy really didn't die. Well, with his strength, it wasn't strange. Qin Zhao glanced at the dozen people behind Vestana. Looks like you're missing a lot of people. Did you inhale too much volcanic ash? Qin Zhao teased. Because they'd lost more than a dozen people, the psionic team had been in grief and anger. Now, they saw Qin Zhao come up to pick a fight. Everyone felt like they were about to be swallowed by anger. Mr. Qin, don't you think it's too much to say that now? Vestana was also angry. It wasn't a surprise that the mission had failed. After all, Vestana's original plan was to bring them here to see the world. Always moving around in North America had limited their horizons and strength. So, the original plan was to make them suffer some setbacks. Even if there were casualties, it was still part of the plan. In the end, their horizons had indeed broadened, but they were also frightened. Tamamo no Mei's appearance had the power to destroy the world. It made them truly understand the difference between the strong and the weak. Even the most arrogant tank and the others had wet their pants in fear. Tamamo no Mei's power had exceeded their understanding, but Tamamo no Mei hadn't targeted them at all. Just the shockwave of her attack had killed half of the psionic team. They'd practically pissed their pants as they escaped from the forest of Aoki Plains. There was also the battle with Tamamo no Mei. They'd heard that it was the Taoist master of the Dragon Tiger Mountain celestial sect, Zhang Tianyi. Even though they were separated by dozens of kilometers, they could still feel the destructive power of that battle. It also made them understand how powerful the two scariest existences in the world were. This also caused everyone's will to be very depressed. If the gap wasn't big, they could fight and surpass it. But that battle made them not know how to surpass or make up for it. Now they were provoked by Chen Zhao again. Someone patted Chen Zhao's shoulder. Wes came to his side. "President, you're too much." "Am I?" You've gone too far." Wester took 2 steps forward. "Miss Vestana, I apologize for my president's words. I'm sorry. President, we should go back." Portia did not understand what grudge Chen Zhao had with these people. The people on the other side were the same as Chen Zhao's group. There were people of all ages and genders. Wistana looked at his back and suddenly said, "Mr. Chin, didn't you also escape? So, there's actually no difference between us. It's true that you guys didn't lose anyone, but you guys don't even have the courage to face danger. In the end, don't you, the guild leader, still have to come out personally?" Needless to say, Vestana's words had indeed provoked the members of the supernatural organization. None of them wanted to accept that, but they really didn't go, because Qin Zhao had stopped them. Portia was even more curious now. Escaped? Where did Qin Zhao escape from? From the woman's tone. They seemed to have gone somewhere before and escaped together. "Because I'm smarter than you. At least I won't send my subordinates to their deaths." Chen Zhao looked back at Vestana. Chen Zhao would not let his subordinates take the risk, even though he knew it was dangerous. It was fine to cultivate their courage and battle awareness, but he did not have to sacrifice some people to cultivate the courage of the rest. "Ms. Vestana," Samira said in a low voice, "are you just going to let us endure other people's provocations?" "When you're not strong enough, you should learn to swallow your anger," Vestana said. "Sometimes challenging the strong is also a part of cultivation," Samira said. "When I think you are qualified to challenge that person, I won't stop you. But before that, you'd better control your temper. If you fail the challenge, you'll only humiliate us even more," Vestana said. "Then when do we need to?" "I have my plan," Vestana said. Vestana's heart was heavy. Everyone had their own thoughts. She could not forcefully combine everyone's thoughts. She could only manage and barely control them. She did not have enough power to suppress everyone in the psionic team. This meant that she was not as strict as Chen Zhao was with the supernatural organization. Vestana's eyes sparkled. Of course, she had her plan. But to complete it successfully, she needed the psionic team's cooperation. Of course, there were also people who cooperated. For example, Britz was someone she had chosen to cooperate with her. Britz was strong enough. However, it wasn't to the point where it could completely suppress everyone else. Sometimes, Vestana really envied Qin Zhao. He was strong enough, and he was the one being chased. He was like the rabbit in the tortoise and the rabbit race. She was the tortoise chasing after the rabbit. She could only chase after the rabbit tirelessly. She did not even know if she had the chance to catch up to the rabbit. But she also did not know if she had the chance to catch up to the rabbit. She knew how strong Chen Zhao was, so she restrained herself every time he provoked her. "President, that girl called Vestana is not simple." "Huh. How is she not simple? She's an ordinary girl, but there are traces of some secret technique on her." What secret technique? A technique that allows one to obtain magic power. Normal people can obtain magic power through secret techniques? Of course, not under normal circumstances, but as long as you're willing to pay a price, it's possible. Is it a heavy price? These spells are called secret techniques because there's an unbearable or even unacceptable price. That's why the user doesn't dare to publicize it. Oh, you can tell. She looks no different from a normal person. But I saw the rune on her hand. It should be some kind of Chinese spell. Chinese? Yes, Huaxia is the most active region in the supernatural world. Moreover, it has the most flourishing metaphysical sections. Moreover, they're completely different from the mystical sects in the West. For example, most of the sects in Japan have inherited the teachings of Huaxia, and that's how they've become the most active region in the supernatural world. 9 Heavens, Divine Emperor. Chapter 1735. Think about it. If a few sects spread to Japan, it can create a prosperous and active supernatural area. How terrifying is China's heritage? As for Huaxia's orthodoxy and inheritance, apart from internal control, the other countries and regions are also controlled to a certain extent. China wants to maintain its advantage, so it controls the spread. I can understand, but why do other countries control and restrict it? Because it will break the existing power balance. Think about it. If a giant like Dragon Tiger Mountain suddenly appears in North America, what will happen? Qin Zhao thought about it. That was indeed the case. If such a behemoth really appeared, Qin Zhao might not let it grow stronger. It had nothing to do with good or evil. Qin Zhao called himself the manager of LA. If any random person came here to criticize him, Qin Zhao would be the first to beat him up. But what does this have to do with Vistana's secret technique? Apart from the orthodoxy, the main restrictions in each region are secret techniques, especially dangerous ones, West said. There's no need to talk about the orthodoxy in China, but many times even a secret technique can break the balance of a region's spiritual world. West looked at Qin Zhao with a serious expression. Vestana is a normal person. Since she used some secret technique on herself, she has 2 requests. One is to turn herself into a spiritualist and have magic power. The other is to break the supernatural organization's power suppression. Or both are possible. Qin Zhao was taken aback by West's words. I hope she can complete the technique as soon as possible. West glanced at Qin Zhao and didn't say anything else. He could more or less guess what Qin Zhao meant. It was better to act earlier than later. It was better to act directly than to be on guard for a long time. If the counterterrorism department and the psionic team didn't have enough power and courage, then they would only scheme in the dark forever. The supernatural organization would always be on guard. Both Qin Zhao and West didn't like being on guard like this. That would tie their hands and feet. This was the trouble of fighting. This was the rule of modern society. The weak could hide. The strong couldn't attack first. They could only wait for the weak to attack. As long as people lived in this society, they would be bound by all sorts of rules. Even the strongest demon king in hell was bound by the rules, let alone Qin Zhao. Qin Zhao and Fei Lai returned to Moon Villa with the 2 kids. Kalon was currently living a luxurious life. These few days, he was almost completely immersed in the bright Moon Villa. The life of the rich was beyond his imagination. Those who had never experienced it would never be able to imagine it. Over the past few days, Kalon had truly understood what it meant by poverty limiting one's imagination. Qin Zhao saw Kalon lying on the sun lounger in his swimming trunks. He didn't react at all when his family came back. Qin Zhao went up and kicked Kalon off the chair. Ah, Mr. Qin, why are you back? Qin Zhao's face darkened. This is my home. Why did I come back? Ah, I didn't mean that. Qin Zhao whistled. At the same time he spread out his aura. All the pets felt Qin Zhao's presence. Qin Zhao looked at the pets gathering over one after another. Looks like you took good care of it. Of course, I didn't slack off, Kellen said proudly. Little Jerlin was already greeting the pets excitedly. Let's go. I'll see if you've been slacking off these days. Come, I'll surprise you. I've been sparring with Cerberus these days. Filled with confidence, Kalon stood before Qinzhao. Then, 10 minutes later, Colin's head was full of bruises. Looks like you haven't been too diligent. Chen Zhao looked at Kalon on the ground. Lying on the ground, Kalon looked at Qin Zhao. Mr. Qin, what did you do this time? Did you carry out a mission? Sort of, Qin Zhao said. It's also a deal. What kind of mission? Is it hard? Do you know about the Mount Fuji eruption in Japan? Yeah, it's been all over the city these days. Apparently, the Japanese government lost over $100 billion because of it. It's a huge loss. In fact, it was caused by a monster escaping from the seal. Chen Zhao didn't hide it. After all, the entire spiritual world knew about it. The news was just an explanation for normal people. Since Kalon was a spiritualist, there was no need to hide anything from him. Monster? What kind of monster? You don't even know what a monster is. Whatever. I'll go back and look it up in the dictionary. Mr. Qin, the monster you're talking about is a spiritual creature, right? Sort of. She can cause a volcano to erupt. She must be really powerful, right? Powerful? Powerful isn't enough to describe her power. She's like a moving nuclear bomb. If there's no restriction, she can even kill all of humanity. Kellen sucked in a breath of cold air. At his current level, he couldn't even begin to imagine what kind of terrifying existence that was. Is it unimaginable? Kalon nodded. It was indeed unimaginable. Don't even think about it. Don't think about surpassing her one day. Don't even think about risking your life if you meet her. In order to stop that peerless fox demon, we gathered 2,000 to 3,000 spirit controllers. But she easily killed more than 1,000 spirit controllers. Kalon shuddered. Qin Zhao continued. The strongest 9 shrines in Japan, with hundreds of people working together, couldn't even block one attack from her. Mr. Qin, what about you? How did you come back alive? Because I'm strong enough. I can't do anything to her, but I can protect myself. Kalon felt that Chen Zhao was also part of the group that had escaped. Of course, Chen Zhao didn't say it clearly for the sake of his reputation. So there's no one in the world who can deal with that fox demon. There are people who can deal with her, but not many. However, the real threat to her is mankind's ultimate weapon, nuclear weapons. I estimate that if a nuclear bomb with a yield of 1 million tons was dropped on her head, it would be enough to make her suffer. Even so, Kalon still felt that it was too exaggerated. A monster that could only be dealt with by humanity's superweapon. Kalon couldn't imagine how powerful that monster would have to be to need nuclear weapons to kill it. Either way, he only needed a high explosive grenade. That would probably be enough. The difference was more than 10 million times. Mr. Qin, do you think there's still a few people in the world who can deal with her? 9 Heavens, Divine King. Chapter 1736. Hi, Gaia. Portia walked into Gaia's gym. This place of yours sure isn't small. Portia was touring Gaia's gym. What, you don't have work today? I don't have anything to do today. If I don't have anything to do, I won't follow him. Do you want to get a gym card here? Can you give it to me for free because of our relationship? Actually, we're not that close. Gaia smiled at Portia. In the end, Portia didn't get a gym card here. She had plenty of time, but it wasn't fixed. Hello, are you Mr. Chen's assistant? Yes, I am. May I know who you are? I'm Felwood Cisco from a construction company. I'm sending you a document. Please pass it to Mr. Qin. Okay. After hanging up, Portia looked at Gaia. I have a job again. Okay. Remember to come here next time. If you're willing to give me a gym card for free, I'll be happy to come here. Ever since Portia returned to L.A., she didn't dare to spend money casually anymore. She did some calculations and realized that she'd spent at least $200,000 in Japan. Apart from paying off her credit card, she also owed Chen Zhao a huge sum of $150,000. Portia didn't dare to spend a single cent recklessly. As for her current job, if she dared to do it carelessly, Chen Zhao would probably make her corpse strewn on the streets tomorrow. Portia opened the document. It was a price list, a private airport construction evaluation report, and a budget. Among them, there were 4 different specifications, all of which were design specifications for medium and small airports. The cheapest of these 4 specifications cost $300 million, and the most expensive one cost $630 million. Portia sucked in a breath of cold air. Her boss was way too rich. Portia had heard Chen Zhao mention buying a private plane a few times before. But buying a private plane and building a private airport were 2 different concepts. Unless it was a giant in the sky, the cheapest one was only a few dozen million, while the expensive one was around $100 million. But a private airport was different. The cheapest one was already $300 million. Including the land, the price would double. Portia went to Minghua Villa and passed the document to Chen Zhao. "Boss, this is a document from Felwood Cisco. Take a look." "Okay, got it." Chen Zhao was sparring with Fei Lai, who was punching and kicking Chen Zhao. This was the first time Portia had seen Fei Lai fight. In fact, Fei Lai's body was already very outstanding. However, because she was an ordinary person, the notification could not be raised too much. Because there was no protection from magic power, if one's physique was increased too much, deformities would appear. Even so, Fei Lai's constitution was still 4 times that of a normal person. After all, Chen Zhao would provide Fei Lai with food from big dishes whenever he was at home. The food wouldn't cause any changes to Fei Lai's body structure. However, this kind of influence was subtle. This kind of change would quietly happen in Fei Lai's body. Fei Lai preferred to fight with gloves. She didn't like direct contact with her fists. That would leave calluses, and she didn't want her skin to become rough. Plus, Chen Zhao's skin was really thick. If she didn't protect him, her hand would be badly hurt. After a while, Fei Lai finally stopped attacking. "Portia, do you want to try?" I don't think so." Portia really wanted to try how it felt to beat the boss. However, after thinking about it, she still gave up this tempting thought. "It's fine. Come and try." Portia looked at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao shrugged. "Come on." In the end, Portia still put on the gloves. She didn't have any fighting foundation, so her punches were no different from a normal woman's. "Your arms have to be level with your shoulders," Chen Zhao reminded. "Punch at a 90-degree angle and use the flexibility of your joints." Portia tried again. She felt like she was punching a wall. Chen Zhao covered his face with his arms. At the same time, he said, "You can try attacking from other angles. Your straight punches are too monotonous." After 10 minutes, Portia was so tired that she was covered in sweat. I can't anymore." Panting, Portia put her hands on her hips. "Let's go swim at the beach." Fei Lai pulled Portia away. Portia was very envious of Fei Lai's stamina and body. There was almost no excess fat on Fei Lai's body. Her muscles didn't bulge exaggeratedly. However, she gave off a streamlined sense of beauty. Although she was envious, Portia knew that she couldn't compare to Fei Lai. Fei Lai could shop, work out, and even eat nutritious meals with relish. She was someone who had to work hard for her life. She also heard that Fei Lai was going back to the coastal rescue team. It was still a job, but Fei Lai's job was her interest. Her job was to make a living. In the evening, Fei Lai asked Portia to stay for dinner before Portia left. "Hey, Miss Portia, there's a small role tomorrow. You can come and try it." The person who called Portia was from the Screen Actors Union. Although Portia was an amateur actress, she still registered with the union. Actually, it was very simple to register as a member. You just had to have at least one role, even if you didn't even have a proper face. You just had to be willing to pay $1,000 a year. Of course, there were benefits too. Members of the Screen Actors Union could enjoy some internal resources. At the same time, they had a guaranteed salary. However, being a member of the Screen Actors Union wasn't all good. For example, the producers of some blockbusters didn't like to use small actors from the Screen Actors Union, because actors from the Screen Actors Union had to follow the rules, such as a guaranteed salary, working hours, and at least 1 second of close-up scenes. Of course, with rules and a bottom line, it also meant that the actors from the Screen Actors Union were better than those who were pulled from the streets or became actors out of interest. When Portia heard the news, she was overjoyed. She already started to imagine what her new role would be like, how long the close-up scenes would be, whether there would be any lines, whether it would be a big production, and so on. In fact, it was this kind of dream and fantasy that supported most actors who weren't famous clench their teeth and persevered. Chapter 1737. Boss, can I take a day off? Portia called Chen Zhao carefully. Sure, Chen Zhao said. I don't have anything tomorrow anyway. Portia was very excited. Chen Zhao didn't make things difficult for her. The next day, Portia contacted the Screen Actors Union. She also got the address of the set from the union. The union had resources, but their biggest disadvantage was that they couldn't guarantee any roles. They couldn't even guarantee minor roles. All the major film companies would cooperate with the union. It was a mutual benefit. However, this cooperation was very fragile. To put it simply, the union had the right to recommend roles, but not the right to decide. For example, when a movie started filming, the producer would send a list of required roles to the union. The list wouldn't only be sent to the union. It would also be sent to all the major management companies. In this aspect, the union didn't have an advantage over the management companies. The managers of the management companies would help their artists with PR and travel. And the Screen Actors Guild wouldn't help their registered members move around. Portia hurried to the set. She still didn't know what role she was going to audition for. There were a lot of people in the audition studio that day, and they were all mediocre actors just like her. However, it could be seen that the producers had released many roles today. They were minor roles, but they were very important to every actor who came for the audition. Every actor had heard all sorts of stories before entering the industry. How hard it was for an actor to become famous. How he started from a young age and finally became famous. This story was common in the entertainment industry all over the world. Of course, it was also the truth. However, it was still a minority. In fact, most of the famous actors were. Their first role might be a role with a close-up and a line. Only a small number of people with no foundation could become successful and famous in the end. However, most actors who could enter Hollywood had the mentality that it was either success or death. They knew that their chances of winning were very low, but they still kept going. They lived in the slums and worked 3 jobs every day. However, as long as there was a role, they'd spend half a year's salary on clothes and makeup. They'd work hard for a role that a dozen or even dozens of people were fighting for. In Hollywood, there were many unspoken rules of using sex to get a role. And this unspoken rule was not limited to men and women. Portia got her script and the requirements for the role. Her script only had 1 sentence, but there was a close-up shot. For an extra like her, getting 1 line and a close-up was already a great stroke of luck. For today's audition, Portia had specially put on the clothes and shoes she had bought in Japan's Ginza. She was lucky today because she felt that she fit the role. The ones auditioning were the casting director and a camera director. Both of them were assistant directors. The 2 of them set up a platform in front of them. Then the actors went up one by one, did a performance, and read their lines. The process was very fast, and each person had less than 30 seconds to perform. Both of them replied in unison, "Thank you for your cooperation. Please go back and wait for further notice." "Portia, you look so beautiful today." At this moment, a blonde walked over and greeted Portia. "Alyssa." Portia turned to look at the woman. Angelisa, like Portia, was an extra. They had arrived in Los Angeles at almost the same time and had been roommates at some point in time. However, the difference between them was that Elisa already had a management company. Portia, on the other hand, was still a lonely ghost. Compared to a year ago, Elisa seemed even prettier. She seemed to have done some minor surgery. From a woman's point of view, Portia could still tell which minor surgeries Elisa had done. It seemed that she had made some money in the past year. Portia wanted to do some minor surgery too. She had always felt that her jawbone was a bit big. She wanted to make it smaller so that she would look more feminine. However, the surgery was not cheap. It would cost at least $8,000. Your dress doesn't look cheap. Elisa tugged at Portia's clothes. Her behavior was a bit rude and seemed very impolite. Portia pulled back her clothes. Elisa covered her mouth and chuckled. Your taste is still so bad. You should ask me to be your advisor. I can give you the right guidance. Portia's face darkened. Don't touch my clothes. You might not be able to afford it. Do you know that this dress looks really old-fashioned on you? In Hollywood, there were no real friendships between women, even for actresses who had yet to become famous. Back then, when they were competing for the same role, Elisa set the alarm in Portia's room 2 hours late and cut the clothes she prepared. In the end, Portia naturally missed out on the role, while Elisa managed to snatch the role. Their friendship and roommate relationship ended there. Portia turned to leave. Elisa looked at Portia's back. Although she said that Portia had poor taste in clothes, in fact, Portia's dress was very expensive. It matched Portia's temperament very well. It was fashionable and sexy. Moreover, they were auditioning for the same role today. Moreover, the role was set to be a fashionable woman. Therefore, Portia's appearance made Elisa feel threatened. Elisa went up and probably kicked Portia's high heels with her toes. Ouch! Portia immediately lost her balance and sat heavily on the ground. The heels of her high heels broke. At the same time, the tightly fitting dress also split due to the movement. Portia, are you okay? Elisa pretended to help Portia. Portia didn't know that it was Elisa's trick. As soon as she got up, she heard a tearing sound. It turned out that Elisa had deliberately stepped on the corner of Portia's dress. In an instant, half of Portia's clothes were torn. The originally sexy and dignified dress now made her look like a beggar. Huh! Laughter came from the audition studio. Ah! Portia covered her face and fled the scene. In fact, both the two assistant directors and the actors auditioning knew what had happened. And this kind of thing happened too many times in the audition studio, so many that they were already numb to it. However, they wouldn't feel sympathy for the actress who was schemed against. They could only say that she didn't have the mentality of a real actress. Jiu Tian Shan Huang. Chapter 1738. Portia felt like she'd lost all her face. As for the audition, she'd forgotten about it. She ran away from the audition studio like she was running for her life. The audition almost broke her. When she got home, Portia felt like her world was collapsing. Portia just wanted to get herself drunk. She didn't know how much she drank. She didn't stop until she heard a police siren downstairs. Hello, who's this? Chan Zhao was unhappy to see an unfamiliar number. Hello, are you Miss Portia's boss? Yes. Is there a problem? I'm from LAPD. Miss Portia's in the police station now. We asked for her contact, but she only gave us your number. She's in the police station? What did she do? Chin Zhao asked, frowning. She's drunk at home. That's not a reason for her to be in the police station. She screamed in her apartment. The neighbors thought something happened inside. Portia lived in one of those old-fashioned apartment buildings where the neighbors were separated by a door or a wall. Basically, if a man and a woman made a little louder in bed, the neighbors could hear them. Okay, I'll have someone bring her out. Chen Zhao's head hurt too. It was always the assistant who solved the boss's problems. Why was it the boss who solved the problem for the assistant when it came to him? Alex, my assistant's in the police station. Bring her out. An hour later, Alex drove Portia, who reeked of alcohol, to Moon Villa. Alex walked up to Qin Zhao and looked at him suspiciously. Qin, did you do something to her? Chen Zhao rolled his eyes. Fei Lai walked out. Hey, Alex, Portia? She doesn't look well. Auntie Portia, what's wrong? Jerlin ran out too. After all, Jerlin and Fei Lai were the ones she interacted with the most at home. Jerlin, what about me? Seeing that Jerlin didn't greet her, Alex was very unhappy. Auntie Alex. Little Jerlin revealed an angelic smile and opened her arms. Alex leaned over and little Jerlin hugged Alex's neck. Help me deal with her and ask her what's going on. Chen Zhao did not want to get involved in Portia's problem. Looking at her current state, she was either heartbroken or someone had died in her family. Chen Zhao couldn't be bothered to talk to her. Fei Lai and Alex carried Portia to the bathroom. Portia was still yelling, "Wine, I want more wine." Not long after, Qin Zhao, who was watching DVDs in the living room, heard Portia crying upstairs. After a while, the noise gradually subsided. Fei Lai and Alex came downstairs. How is it? Did her relatives die? Or is there something wrong with your relationship? Chen, is it really okay to curse her family like this? All right then, what happened to her? It seems like she went to a movie set for an audition today and then something went wrong, but we don't know the details. Was she assaulted at the audition studio? I don't think so. She doesn't have any injuries, Alex said. Do you know what movie it is? Chen Zhao asked. I don't know, but I know the address. It's on set 122 in Hollywood. I'll call and ask, Chen Zhao said. How's Portia now? She's already asleep. Chen Zhao thought for a moment and picked up the phone. Rasp, it's me. Chin, I heard that you went to Japan. I remember that the volcano erupted there. Weren't you trapped there? The lockdown was lifted long ago. You still don't know? Chen Zhao rolled his eyes. I want to ask you something. Tell me, what is it? Do you know what movie is being filmed at Hollywood Studio 122? Studio 122. Let me check. After a few minutes of silence, Raspa said, It's James' new movie, Apocalypse Now. Why do you ask? It's James' movie? Yeah, you don't know. I don't know either. Never mind, I'll call James. Okay. Our movie is going to be released soon. Are you paying attention? It's not released yet. The premiere is on September 29th. Are you and Fei Lai coming? Nah, we're not celebrities. We won't go on the red carpet. After chatting with Raspa for a while, Qin Zhao hung up and dialed James' number. James, it's Qin. Qin, how come you're free to call me? I heard that your new movie started filming. Is that right? Yeah. Why? Do you want to be a guest? No, I have a friend who went to your crew for an audition today. When she came back, she was in bad condition. It seems like something happened to her. Can you help me look into it? I want to know what happened. No problem. What's your friend's name? I'll call you later. Portia. About 20 minutes later, James called Chen Zhao back. This kind of thing was not difficult to investigate. After all, when it happened in public. Dozens of actors and staff at the scene saw what happened. In the morning, Portia found herself in an unfamiliar environment, but she soon knew where she was. Although she was a little drunk, Portia still couldn't let go of the humiliating experience the day before. Knock, knock. Portia, are you up? Fei Lai's voice came from outside the door. Portia didn't really want to respond. Eventually she said, Fei Lai, come in. Portia, how do you feel? Not good. I feel like my head is going to explode. Portia got off the bed and stretched. Fei Lai, why am I here? You went to the police station and Qin had someone send you here. Did I say anything yesterday? No, you were already drunk when you came back. I had to spend a lot of effort to wash you. You fell asleep not long after. Fei Lai didn't want to open Portia's wound. Portia still felt embarrassed. Thank you. Sorry for the trouble. It's just a small thing, Feilai said. "Get up. You'll feel better after eating breakfast." When Portia arrived at the dining room, she realized that Chun Zhao and Feilai's family's breakfast was terrifyingly sumptuous. It was even more sumptuous than the breakfast provided by the hotel. She really didn't understand how much time Qin Zhao and Feilai had spent preparing breakfast. 9 Heavens, Divine King. Chapter 1739. Portia was very lucky. Qin Zhao had given her 2 days off. Of course, it was Feilai who had spoken. Qin Zhao didn't say anything, but Portia knew that Chun Zhao and Feilai were taking care of her. Portia indeed felt that she was in a bad state today. She couldn't let go of the stain in her life yesterday. Portia didn't know how she spent the whole day. Her mind would never be able to forget the humiliating experience yesterday. Just then, Portia's phone rang. "Are you Miss Portia?" "I am. May I know who you are?" "I'm the assistant director of Apocalypse Revelation. I think you're very suitable for a role in our movie. Are you interested?" "Yes." Portia paused. Suddenly, she calmed down again. "He's a liar. He's definitely a liar." If the movie crew really needed to choose an actor, the director or assistant director couldn't call the actor directly. If it was a famous actor, it might be possible, but she'd only gotten a minor role. The assistant director couldn't call her directly. "You liar. I'm not interested in any role." After that, Portia hung up the phone. Liar. He didn't even know the rules of Hollywood and wanted to trick her. Was she really that easy to trick? On the other side, the assistant director looked at the phone in shock. He turned around and looked at James. How was it? Did she agree? "Mr. James, she thought I was a liar and hung up," the assistant director said gloomily. "Give me the phone. I'll call her myself." James called Portia. "Hi, Miss Portia. I'm James." "Which James? Have you seen Animal Mart?" "Yes." "Are you going to tell me that you're the director of Animal Mart?" Portia sneered. She wasn't that stupid. Animal Mart was one of the most popular movies last year. Director James became famous overnight and became an upstart director in Hollywood. Many of his experiences were also dug up. For example, he'd once been Steven's assistant for more than 20 years. Of course, she knew James' name, but she didn't believe that James would call her personally. Portia wanted to be famous, but she didn't believe that James would call her. She was aware of her own limitations. "Yes, I'm that James. Mr. James, I don't have money, and I don't want to play with you anymore. Please stop harassing me. Thank you," Portia said in disgust, then hung up. James was also depressed. After all, he was a famous director. He was actually treated as a swindler. James thought about it. Chun Zhao was his benefactor. Moreover, Chun Zhao had great influence on Raspa and Steven. Also, Chun Zhao, Raspa, and Steven's new movie was about to be released. If the investment for this movie is successful, then he would have more influence on Hollywood. Although James was famous now, it did not mean that he could ignore everything. Moreover, he had a good personal relationship with Qin Zhao. Thus, he suppressed his displeasure. He called Portia again. "Miss Portia, it's still me, James." "All right, James. What will it take for you to let me go?" Portia felt that she had nothing to do now. Since these films were going to continue pestering her, she would let them continue. It was a good way to kill time. Portia hoped from the bottom of her heart that this James was real. However, her rationality still told her that it was fake. He was a swindler. "Miss Portia, if you don't believe me, you can come to the set," James said. "It's the audition studio where you had your audition yesterday. We'll be filming here." Portia's heart jumped. She was a little tempted. There were 2 voices in her mind that kept controlling her heart. "Anyway, I won't ask you to transfer money, nor do I need your driver's license number or your credit card number." "Fine, I'll go and take a look." Portia felt uneasy. Was it real? No, that was impossible. Why would Director James call her personally? Was it a scam? As long as she made up her mind not to transfer money, even if the other party was a swindler, he would not succeed. Nevertheless, Portia still decided to drive to the Hollywood set. There was a huge set in Hollywood. Many studios were arranged neatly in the field. This was the most famous set in the world. Since the 1970s, after Hollywood's Reformation, Hollywood movies had become famous all over the world. Hollywood movies became famous all over the world, and this place became the most famous and developed filming location in the world. Portia arrived outside the studio where she had auditioned yesterday. She was still a little hesitant. She was worried that the more hopeful she was, the more disappointed she would be. However, in the end, she plucked up her courage and walked into the studio. At this time, the studio was no longer the same as it was yesterday. After entering the set, she saw an area that had been transformed into an office. There were more than a dozen people and a few actors there, and they were filming. Portia hesitated as she walked in that direction. Just then, Elisa saw Portia. Elisa seemed to have just finished filming a set of scenes and immediately walked towards Portia. "Hey, Portia, why are you here again? By the way, we're filming here. How did you get in?" Elisa said in a mocking tone. "You're not here to try your luck, are you?" Portia, of course, knew that it was Elisa who played tricks yesterday. That was why she made a fool of herself in public. Portia tried her best to restrain her anger as she sized up the interior of the studio in silence. She seemed to be looking for something. "Don't tell me you knew that Mr. James would come to the studio today, so you came looking for an opportunity. Don't be silly, Portia. Why would James want to see you?" Portia's expression was uncertain. Could it be that this scam was deliberately arranged by Elisa? Did she deliberately trick her here and then humiliate her? "You bitch." Portia finally couldn't help but slap Elisa in the face. Elisa was stunned. You dare hit me. I'll kill you." In an instant, the two women wrestled with each other. They didn't care about their image at all. They grabbed each other's clothes, pulled each other's hair, and rolled on the ground. "Stop, both of you, stop." Just then, a majestic voice sounded. Chapter 1740. Tell me what's going on. James looked at the scene angrily. This was a film crew, his film crew. Now, there was actually a fight in his crew, and it was two women. Portia had thought about it when she made the move. She would take revenge on Elisa, even if she went to the police station. "This woman is crazy. She hit me for no reason. Call the police, call the police. She hurt me. I want an injury report." Elisa roared hysterically. "I'm an actress. This woman broke into the crew and hurt me." James looked at Portia. "Miss, you'd better explain yourself. Otherwise, I'll have to call the police." "It's this bitch. She hired a swindler to trick me here. She used Mr. James' name to trick me," Portia said. James was stunned. "You're Miss Portia?" Portia was a little dazed. She suddenly raised her head and looked at James. "Mr. James, you know me?" "She didn't hire a swindler. I called you before." Portia felt like the whole world was turning upside down. What did she just do? What did she do? God, he had ruined everything. What would Mr. James think? Would he think that she was crazy? This was a chance similar to winning the lottery. She was completely ruined now. "Bolton, bring script number 012 over and show it to Miss Portia," James said. "Miss Portia, this role has a few minutes of scenes. It'll take about 3 days to shoot. You'd better plan your time well." "Huh? What? Mr. James? What? Is there a problem?" James asked. Don't you need an audition?" James looked at Portia, thought for a moment, and said, "I think your image is good and suitable for this role. It's that simple. Okay, you can go back and study the script after it's here. I hope you can get into the right state on the day of filming. I don't have much time." With that, James turned and left. But after a few steps, James looked at Elisa again. "Miss, since you're in my crew, I don't want any scandals to spread about you before the movie is released. Otherwise, I don't mind making you disappear from Hollywood forever." Elisa was dumbfounded. Portia was equally dumbfounded. They didn't expect their identities to be transferred so suddenly. Portia had actually gotten an important role. Don't underestimate a character with only a few minutes of screen time. In any movie, he could be considered one of the main characters. After all, Elisa's movie roles from last year to this year didn't even have as many lines and scenes as Portia's. How was this possible? Did Portia know Mr. James? But Mr. James clearly didn't know Portia. And Portia didn't know Mr. James. James even called her himself. When Portia was asked to come to the studio, she was stunned. Portia still thought she was lying. They clearly didn't know each other, so why would James call Portia? And he would even give her such an important role. At this moment, Elisa felt extremely jealous. Why? Based on what? Why wasn't this role his? He had more experience performing than her. Furthermore, he could do anything that Portia couldn't or wasn't willing to do. But very quickly, Elisa controlled her emotions. She forced a smile at Portia. She hoped that Portia could sense her kindness. Unfortunately, Portia left with the assistant director without turning back. From afar, Elisa saw the assistant director hand a script to Portia. One had to know that Elisa's own script was just a few pieces of printed paper bound together. But Portia actually had a script. This made her so jealous that she couldn't control herself. Why? How was she inferior to her? She worked harder than her, was prettier than her, had better taste than her, was more fashionable than her, and had better acting skills than her, apart from being more educated than her. What else did she have that was better than her? Why did Mr. James call her? He invited her to play an important role in a movie, but she didn't even have a chance. At the same time, Portia felt like she was dreaming. It was all too surreal. Portia still didn't feel real. Portia used the afternoon to calm down. At this moment, Portia began to wonder why James would give her a role, and he obviously didn't know her. But after thinking about it, Portia couldn't figure it out. Why was this happening? Was it because he coveted her beauty? Portia didn't doubt the unspoken rules of Hollywood, but James didn't know her at all. There was no reason for him to covet her beauty. Moreover, when James had seen her, she'd even fought with Elisa. At that time, Portia knew how pathetic she was. James clearly didn't have any desire for her, but he still gave her the script. Portia, didn't I give you 2 days off? You don't need to work today, Qin Zhao said. Portia's mental state was clearly different today. I need to work now, Portia said. I need to support myself. Qin Zhao generously gave her 2 days off. But Qin Zhao also maintained the good capitalist tradition, stingy. Vacation was fine, but paid leave was out of the question. It was just as Portia had said. Portia needed money now. Of course, it was mainly because she wanted to show off in front of Qin Zhao these few days. She also wanted to borrow some money from Qin Zhao. But in her words, it wasn't borrowing money. It was an advance on her salary. Actually, Portia felt that working for Qin Zhao was really easy. Apart from the high salary, she had more freedom in her time. Her work was also very easy. She would receive and forward some documents and answer some calls. She would also report some things to Qin Zhao. Occasionally, she would go on a business trip with Qin Zhao for a few days and play around. Was there anything more perfect than this job? She couldn't shine like a Hollywood star. If that's the case, help me go to Mountain Town. I have a villa there that's being rebuilt. Help me check the progress. Of course, as Qin Zhao's employer, Portia didn't just have to check the progress. She also had to check the account books and see if there were any low-quality materials. Qin Zhao was friends with Felwood Cisco. He'd also attended Jerlin's birthday party. But business was business. Plus, it was where Qin Zhao's family lived. Chapter 1741. Evil Capitalists. Portia stared at the villa that was already taking shape beside Mirror Lake. When Felwood Cisco learned of Portia's intentions, he immediately invited her into his temporary office. Whatever documents Portia needed, Felwood Cisco would bring them to her as soon as possible. Even if the documents weren't at the construction site, Felwood would have someone send them over immediately. Portia had been someone's assistant before. She had also inspected a construction site before. Back then, the contractor had various shady relationships and refused to give her any excuses. He tried to evade her requests in every possible way, causing her investigation to be very unsuccessful. Before coming to Mirror Lake, she was already mentally prepared. In the end, Felwood Cisco was much more cooperative than she had expected. Felwood Cisco didn't make things difficult for him or reject him. Little did she know that Felwood didn't dare to do anything to Chen Zhao's project, even though he knew that some actions were unspoken rules. But Felwood didn't dare to do anything either. For example, he could change the steel to a substandard one. This was almost impossible to detect in the quality inspection. Even the substandard steel would meet the requirements and quality requirements of the project. The only loophole was that the material bill had to be fabricated to avoid the customer's inspection. Of course, there were still traces to be found, such as transfer records and the like. It wasn't as if Felwood Cisco had never done such a thing before. But that was before he met Qin Zhao. After that, Qin Zhao gave him projects one after another. Each one was bigger than the last. Felwood had already set his mind on Qin Zhao. As long as he clung on to Qin Zhao, his company could definitely develop and become stronger. For example, the Mingyue Villa project. It had already become a famous scenic spot in Los Angeles. At the same time, it was Felwood's superstar project. Thus, many rich people asked Felwood's company to design and build their own villas. There was never a lack of rich people in Los Angeles. Of course, there weren't many projects that Felwood could supervise personally. Most of the time, he stayed in his office with the air conditioner. In the past 2 years, his company had developed quite well. In particular, the completion of Mingyue Mountain Villa had given his company a certain amount of fame in the industry. Right now, his company couldn't compare to the top companies. At the very least, it wouldn't be a problem for him to feed himself. Only projects commissioned by Chen Zhao would require him to stay at the site for at least 4 hours a day. Of course, the workers in Felwood Cisco's company loved Chen Zhao's projects the most. After all, Chen Zhao was the most generous customer they had ever seen. During the holidays, he had never neglected them. Because the account book was very clear and clean, there were almost no mistakes. Therefore, Portia settled the accounts very quickly. Mr. Felwood, thank you for your cooperation. Not at all. This is what I should do. Can I walk about? Asked Portia. Of course. But if you want to enter the construction site, you need to wear a safety helmet first. Portia saw a pasture a kilometer away from Mirror Lake. Hundreds of cows were grazing on the grass. Because of the direction of the wind, the smell of the ranch would not come here at all. Portia could not help but be suspicious. Was Chen Zhao in the livestock industry? That wasn't right. There were a few big bosses in California, but Chen Zhao shouldn't be among them. Furthermore, a few hundred cows was not considered a large-scale operation. He wasn't even in the top 1,000. Just then, a woman dressed like a cowgirl rode over. She was Murphy's girlfriend, Rebecca. Ever since her matter was over, she was controlled by Chen Zhao in L.A. She was also warned by Chen Zhao. If she dared to leave L.A. quietly, then Chen Zhao would fill the sea with her. But her current situation was not bad. At least she didn't have to run away like before. Murphy was nice to her too. She was also in charge of taking care of the cows. It wasn't hard, nor did she have to work a lot of hours. The salary that Chen Zhao paid her was not bad. Therefore, her life was not bad. Hello, may I ask who you are? Hello, I'm Portia. I'm Mr. Chen's personal assistant. Oh, I'm Rebecca. I work for him too. I'm in charge of taking care of the cows, Rebecca said. Are you one of us? What? Portia looked at Rebecca in confusion. No, nothing. From Portia's reaction, Rebecca could tell that Portia was a normal person. She did not know Qin Zhao or her identity at all. What do you mean we're one of us? Nothing. Rebecca shook her head, chuckling. Portia, could only scratch her head in confusion. Do the cows and this pasture belong to the boss? Yes. Does the boss only have this pasture? Portia asked tentatively. The boss eats the cows himself, Rebecca said. He doesn't sell them. What? Eat them himself? Portia was speechless. That was too much. Raising so many cows for himself to eat? His entire family probably couldn't eat more than a few cows in their lifetime. I send him 10 slaughtered cows every week, Rebecca said. Portia suddenly remembered that Chun Zhao did indeed have a lot of beef at home. Plus, they were not the only ones at home. He had many pets, including the sea. She remembered that she had helped Fei Lai feed the sharks last time. This made Portia feel the difference between the rich and the poor again. Rich people were like this. They raised so many cows, but most of them were used to feed their pets. Portia couldn't even afford one. Rebecca, can you take care of so many cows by yourself? Of course, Rebecca said nonchalantly. By the way, my boyfriend works for Mr. Chintu. I'll introduce you to Murphy some other day. Let's go. I'll show you around. Does this all belong to the boss? Yes. With Mirror Lake as the center, everything within 16 square kilometers is the boss' private land. Portia sighed. The pasture was at least 5 square kilometers. It was still a waste of resources to only raise a few hundred cows on such a large area. With such a large area and good quality grass, it was more than enough to raise a few thousand cows. Hey, there's a factory over there. That's a brewery, Rebecca said. It's also the boss' property. Portia remembered that Gaia had once told her that Qin Zhao sold alcohol. So she was talking about this brewery. But looking at that brewery, it was obviously not very big. It might not be Qin Zhao's main property. Divine Emperor of 9 Heavens. Chapter 1742. Qin Zhao walked around Mirror Lake. Portia was stimulated. Mingyue Villa was fine. But Qin Zhao had built another villa that wasn't any worse than Mingyue Villa. Did this guy have too much money to burn or something? Actually, it was because Qin Zhao thought it was too easy to make money. If he made money, why would he keep it in the bank? Most capitalists had enough funds, or they would make investments. Otherwise, they would be like Qin Zhao and exchange all their money for luxury goods. In fact, buying luxury goods was also a type of investment. For example, mansions, yachts, and planes wouldn't depreciate easily. For example, Qin Zhao's Mingyue Villa was originally bought from Amira. But now, Amira wanted to buy Mingyue Villa and Moon Beach for 20 times the price. Of course, Qin Zhao wouldn't agree to such a request. Now, Qin Zhao had cleaned up Mingyue Villa. Some of the investments seemed to be from Qin Zhao's own pocket, but its value was far greater than a few $100 million. Living in Mingyue Villa would increase one's lifespan and make one's body and mind comfortable. Its true value wasn't something Amira could understand. The depreciation of planes and yachts was much slower than the depreciation of the currency. So, without good investment projects, rather than keeping money in the bank, it was better to buy luxury goods. At least, after enjoying the luxury goods, they could be resold. The price wouldn't be much lower than the cost. If they were kept in the bank, the depreciation of the currency would make Qin Zhao cry even if he wanted to. This was also why most rich people would choose to live luxuriously. Of course, while enjoying a good life was one reason, maintaining the value of one's wealth was also another. On the way back, Portia called Alex. Ms. Alex, I want to hire a lawyer. Portia needed someone to sign the contract for her. Because she didn't have a manager, it would be more troublesome to sign the contract. Hollywood had a rule that a professional had to be present when signing a contract with an actor. It had to be either a manager or a lawyer, because in the last century, an actress had signed a contract. In the end, she was sold to San Fernando Valley. The reason was that the actress didn't have professional knowledge and didn't even know she was sold. To prevent such a vicious incident from happening again, that was why there was such a rule. This was also why the manager system was flourishing. All professional actors must have a manager. However, Portia was not a professional actress. He didn't have his name in the agency either, so she needed to hire her own lawyer. Of course, there was no need for a famous lawyer. As long as he could understand the contract, that was enough. Alex straightforwardly expressed that she would send a lawyer to Portia for free. How would Portia know? Actually, Chun Zhao had said before, if Portia was in need of a contract, let Alex help Portia with this. At this time yesterday, Portia felt that the whole world had turned gray. Today, Portia felt that the world was so colorful. Not long after, Portia arrived at Bright Moon Villa. Boss, I've checked all aspects of the Mirror Lake Villa project. At present, 35% of the project has been completed. The accounts of the project are also very clear and there are no problems found. The quality of the project needs to be tested by a professional evaluation agency. I've already contacted the project quality evaluation agency. There should be results in 3 days. The evaluation of the quality of the project was not to be carried out only after the project was completed. Instead, there were 3 to 4 testing cycles. If there was a quality problem during a certain period, it could be stopped or corrected in time. Instead of waiting for the entire project to be completed before testing it, if there was a problem with the quality, they could only tear it down and rebuild it. It would be a loss for both Qin Zhao and the engineering company. Therefore, early or mid-stage quality testing was necessary. If it was a large project, the testing would be more frequent. It might need to be tested every 5% of the progress. Just then, Sardin's voice suddenly appeared in Chun Zhao's mind. Sardin's Starry Night's shadow, the god of otherworldlings, was Nanchi Island's true form. Back then, Chun Zhao had threatened Sardin to submit to him. He had also left dark magma in Sardin's core, allowing him to completely control and dominate him. At the same time, Chun Zhao had Sardin continuously move toward Los Angeles. However, Qin Zhao hadn't contacted Sardin for a long time. He only occasionally observed Sardin's current location. Now, Sardin had contacted him of his own accord. This meant that he wasn't too far away from Los Angeles. That night, Qin Zhao went to confirm Sardin's location. Currently, Sardin was between Hawaii and Los Angeles, about 2,000 kilometers away from Los Angeles. However, Sardin had always been moving under the sea, so even satellites couldn't find him. However, Chun Zhao started to worry about how to settle this island. Should he just leave him in the distant sea and ignore him? This clearly wasn't in Chun Zhao's interest. Then, there would be no point in controlling him. Chun Zhao thought about it and decided to find someone he could negotiate with. The person he thought of was Del. Del was a rich man, and he was also a psychic. Plus, Del and Chun Zhao had a close relationship. So, Del was the only person Chun Zhao could think of that could be discussed with. Del, are you free? What? It's late. What do you want? I'll go to your house, Chun Zhao said. Chun Zhao quietly went to Del's manor. Del had been waiting for a long time. Seeing Chun Zhao run over mysteriously, he didn't know what Chun Zhao wanted to say. Del, let me ask you something. If I have an island that can move, and this island is approaching Los Angeles right now, what method do I need to use to make it its legal owner in name? Del's eyes almost popped out. Chin, are you kidding me? No, I'm serious. Do you have any ideas? Yes, Del said. You need to become the owner of that sea first and buy it in the name of a marine farm. Then how do I make this island appear in front of the world? It won't be too sudden. At least it'll be reasonable. An underwater volcano eruption or an earthquake. Del looked at Chun Zhao. You're serious, right? I said I'm serious. Chun Zhao rolled his eyes. He knew that this was unbelievable even to spiritualists. 9 Heavens, Divine Emperor. Chapter 1743. Chin, tell me, where did you get a moving island? Dale was too interested in this. He was a capitalist just like Chun Zhao. Plus, He'd received an elite education. He knew better than Qin Zhao how attractive an island that suddenly appeared in front of the world could be. Do you remember the sinking of the Phalai? I do. You said you went out to play, but when you came back, the Phalai sank. That time I actually went out to search for pirates' treasure, Qin Zhao said. My partner and I found Nanchi Island, the island where the Big Belly family has lived for generations. This island is actually a sealed monster. I call that monster the god of otherworldliness. I found it and controlled it. It listens to me now. If I want it to float on the water, it will float. If I want it to sink into the sea, it will sink. Qin Zhao said, my partner and I found the god of otherworldliness. Dell's eyes were filled with excitement. He was clearly attracted by Qin Zhao's adventure story. Westerners had an irresistible attraction to adventure and pirate stories. This was also related to their culture and history. Plus, Qin Zhao's adventure story was filled with fantasies. A monster the size of an island that could move. How big is it? Dell exclaimed. How big is it to support an island? About 10 square kilometers, Qin Zhao said. If it's in shallow waters, it'll be bigger. Qin, I gave you such a great idea. Shouldn't you reward me? What do you want? I want to build a hotel on this island. I believe that as long as the location of the island is right, it can definitely be made into the best vacation island in the United States. At that time, as long as shopping malls and living facilities are built on this island will become a priceless treasure. Qin Zhao's heart jumped. Indeed, he'd wanted to make it a private island. But from Dell's words, it seemed like the island was indeed a super big project. It was also very valuable as an investment. If he turned the island into a vacation spot, Qin Zhao could earn money while lying down. If he could increase the unique attractiveness of the island, he would be able to attract more attention. Qin Zhao thought about it, and his eyes suddenly lit up. I've thought of a great idea, Qin Zhao said. What idea? This otherworldling god has some heirs, and they all have huge bodies. Say, if we find a huge body of a certain creature on the island, wouldn't it be more attractive to build a museum of such creatures on the island? That's right. Sarden has some skeletons of his descendants. I can use these skeletons as a gimmick. Why not alive? Nothing alive. There's a living one. That's the descendant of the unusual god. It's nothing more than an ordinary creature that transformed into a giant after being infused with his power. But I'm worried that it'll be too shocking. If we find the skeletons of these giant creatures, we can easily find out the age of these skeletons. Skeletons that have only died a few years or decades ago can't be hidden from biologists at all. So it's better to find living creatures. Dell thought for a moment. And it's best if it's an animal that doesn't pose a threat to humans. Normal people can get close to it. That's the biggest gimmick. One had to admit that Dell's thoughts were more comprehensive and perfect than Qin Zhao's. Of course, Dell was also helping himself by helping Qin Zhao. What do I do about the marine farm? Don't you have your own team of lawyers? Just let them handle it for you. Now, you have to decide where you want the island to appear. Do you have a map? Dell took out his tablet, and the two of them studied the map on the tablet. First, it can't be too far from the ground. Around 1,000 kilometers is the best distance. It won't be too far on a boat. Why not build an airport? The investment for an airport is too big, and it'll take up too much space. I think that it'll take up the island's commercial resources. So I think it's best to use a boat to travel between the mainland and the island. What do you think about filling up the sea and increasing the island's area? If that's the case, the investment will be over $10 billion. Dell looked at Qin Zhao. Unless you can get more investors. Qin Zhao rubbed his chin and thought. If he had to pay for it himself, he could get that much with a loan. However, Qin Zhao didn't like debt. Plus, if he took everything for himself, people would be jealous. In this world, no one could take everything for themselves and still enjoy it. so he could only get financing. But rather than letting outsiders take advantage of him, he might as well take advantage of his own people. Risvar and Del could be counted as one. Stephen and Rasfa could also be counted as part of his plan. Amira put aside her identity as the regional manager of Citibank. Her family was also super rich, so she could be counted as one. His mother could also be counted as one, but he would definitely take the majority. The people Chen Zhao counted were all worth more than $1 billion. On the other hand, Risvar, Amira, and his mother were all worth more than him. However, they might not have that much cash, but they were all super clients of the bank. It was easy for them to get a few $100 million from the bank. Apart from sharing the risk, getting people to join this super project was also important. At the same time, they could share the pressure from the profits. Of course, Chen Zhao would definitely take the majority. After all, the entire island was his. He had to share the profits with everyone, so he had to eat his fill first. Of course, this plan was still in his imagination. Chen Zhao first had to take ownership of an area of the ocean. Only then could he start his plan. Moreover, Sardin wasn't fast. He needed time to move to his designated location. Chen Zhao and Del discussed the time for the whole night. Finally, they decided on a location. It was 850 kilometers away from Del and Risvar's hotel. Del, from now on you have to save money. When the time comes, don't look for me to borrow money. Of course, this was just a joke. If Del didn't have enough money to borrow from him, Chen Zhao would still lend him money. Oh, tell Risvar that there's a big project. Tell him to prepare some cash in the next 2 years. 9 Heavens, Divine Emperor. Chapter 1744. This couldn't be leaked yet. So, Chen Zhao only planned to tell Del. Del was a capitalist too. He knew very well that, as long as this went smoothly, he'd definitely make a lot of money. But once the news got out and the capital market noticed, he'd lose his advantage. On one hand, it was unusual, but on the other hand, it was for the sake of profits. So, Del would take this secret more seriously than others. Of course, there was no sign of it yet. No matter what Del did, it wouldn't attract the attention of the capital market. As long as this succeeded, Chen Zhao's assets would double or triple. Chen Zhao would be ranked among the top 10 richest people in the world. Moreover, it would be done anonymously. As long as Chen Zhao's business wasn't listed, he didn't need to disclose the shareholders and financial statements. Of course, Forbes' ranking wasn't completely accurate. This was because the Forbes World's Richest list only counted the shareholders of listed companies. However, in this world, there were too many companies and individuals who were not listed on the stock exchange, but had the wealth of a country. But this plan would take a long time. First, he had to show the island to the world. This would take more than half a year. Then he'd have to build the island. Reclaiming the sea, building the island, the airport, and so on would take at least 3 to 4 years. Chen Zhao had plenty of cash right now, so as long as he didn't take out all his money directly, he still had plenty. But other people probably didn't have that much cash. However, the others probably didn't have that much cash. If they wanted to join the plan, they would have to borrow from the bank. It would take at least 5 years to officially open the island. In the short term, if they didn't have enough cash flow, the bank's interest could crush them. Therefore, Chen Zhao also needed to spread some news to the investors he liked. At the same time, he had to sound them out. If they weren't willing to invest, then all his efforts would be for nothing. Investment was not something that could be decided by friendship alone. Del knew the inside story, so he could predict the market and the rate of return. That was why he was so proactive. But not everyone could see it. Before dawn, Chen Zhao returned to Minghua Villa. "Alex, are you free this morning?" "Work." "Yes," Chen Zhao answered. "Okay, I'll go there in the morning." Alex ran over in a hurry. "Chen, what's up?" "Don't rush. Have some breakfast. You haven't eaten yet, right?" Alex sat across from Chen Zhao. "I need the ownership of a sea region. How much money do I need? How big is it? Where is it located? What is it used for? I need an area of about 100 square kilometers between Los Angeles and Hawaii, about 800 to 900 kilometers away from Los Angeles. It will be used for aquaculture, but I need full ownership. 800 kilometers from land? This was already considered a distant sea. How could they carry out aquaculture at that location? Are you sure you're not crazy? Alex frowned. Even if she wasn't involved in the marine industry, she knew the basics. There was no land to rely on. It was just a sea area with no land to rely on for marine aquaculture. It was like throwing money into water. You don't have to worry about that. You just need to tell me if you can get the ownership of that sea region. It's not a big problem, Alex said. How much will it cost? Not more than $5 million. It's a sea region with no economic value. It's not a necessary sea route either. As long as you don't pollute and do aquaculture, the government will love it. But are you sure your plan is fine? Alex was still skeptical about Chen Zhao's idea. Alex, you know that $5 million is only my income for 2 days. But you can't throw $5 million into the sea. That's really throwing it into the sea. I have my own plan. Chen Zhao chuckled. Alex knew that Chen Zhao wasn't the kind of person who would throw money into the sea just because he had nowhere to spend it. She couldn't help but suspect that Chen Zhao had some other business plan. However, she really couldn't figure out what Chen Zhao's intentions were. Was there some kind of underwater treasure in that sea region? Even if there was, he could just hire a salvage company to fish it up. There was really no need to buy the entire sea region, right? Or was there some kind of underwater mineral deposits? Or oil? If that was the case, Chen Zhao might not have the right to participate in the energy industry. This was a very practical problem. It wasn't a matter of how much money he had. Some people had fewer assets than Chen Zhao, but they were qualified. Chen Zhao had a lot of money now. However, his connections weren't enough for him to enter. You really want to start aquaculture? Alex asked. After all, Chen Zhao's main businesses were beer manufacturers and restaurants. But both were countless times worse than aquaculture, right? Oh, Marina Restaurant's source of some ingredients was very mysterious. Apparently, many restaurants had tried to uncover the secret of Marina Restaurant's high-grade ingredients. However, there had been no news. Was the aquaculture part of Marina Restaurant's ingredients? In order to avoid people's attention, he purposely chose a sea region with no land to cultivate? If that was the case, it was possible. Jin, can I participate? How much money can you take out? Chen Zhao asked. If I get a loan from the bank, I can get about $20 million at most. Chen Zhao shook his head. Forget it. Alex looked at Chen Zhao. How much are you going to invest in this project? I'm not sure, Chen Zhao said. But $20 million won't even allow you to enter the market. Plus, the return period is very long. A loan of $20 million will drag you down. Plus, it's an uncertain project. They were on the same side. Chen Zhao didn't need to be mysterious with her. Some things were better to be direct. There was no need to create barriers. Fine. Alex wasn't stupid. After all, she could become a famous lawyer. She knew how capital worked. She also knew that $20 million wasn't much. However, just like every rich person's problem, Alex also had a headache about what to invest in. There was a very important standard for investing cash in a business. It didn't matter if it was profitable, but it had to be able to maintain its value. 9 Heavens, Divine Emperor. Chapter 1745. Boss, I need to take the day off. Tomorrow. Portia looked at Chen Zhao carefully. Sure. Chen Zhao quickly approved Portia's leave. Boss, aren't you going to ask why I'm taking a leave? Portia asked. I won't interfere with your private life, but I think you should deal with your relationship problems as soon as possible. That's right. Portia's face darkened. It turned out that her boss thought that there was something wrong with her personal feelings. But when he thought about it, it made sense. He was drunk that day. It was probably because he was drunk that day. Let him think that there was something wrong with his personal feelings. Of course, Portia did not intend to explain. It was better this way. If Chen Zhao found out that she had gone to work part-time to earn extra money, she didn't know if Qin Zhao would throw her into the sea. Just then, Qin Zhao received Stephen's call. "Hey, Stephen, what's up?" "Qin," Stephen said. "Our movie's about to be released. Tomorrow's the premiere." "Okay, then I'll go over and discuss the details with you." Actually, Chen Zhao was going to give her the lucky coin. "Portia, are you in a hurry?" "If you're not in a hurry, give me a ride." "Boss, there are so many cars at home. I suddenly don't want to drive," Qin Zhao said matter-of-factly. "How sudden? Then what will happen when you come back?" "Get someone to send me back." "All right, where are we going?" Portia dropped Qin Zhao off at Stephen's house. Portia had thought that the friend Qin Zhao was going to visit was some rich guy. However, when he saw Stephen's house, he realized that it was just an ordinary villa. To be honest, Stephen's house was too ordinary. Of course, Stephen was also looking for a suitable place to build a new house. He planned to look like Qin Zhao. It was mainly because Mirror Lake and Moon Coast that Qin Zhao had chosen were too outstanding. "Boss, I'm leaving." "Okay." Qin Zhao got out of the car and waved. There were only 2 maids in Stephen's house, and they were both elderly. When he saw Chen Zhao, he let him in. "Stephen." Chen Zhao saw Stephen sunbathing beside the pool. It was already the end of September, and the temperature in Los Angeles had dropped. In addition, it was morning, so sunbathing was not a good idea. "Didn't you go to the studio today?" Chen Zhao sat down on a nearby chair. "I bought a piece of land on the other side of Peaceful Mountain. I plan to build a villa there," Stephen answered without answering the question. "How's the movie?" Chen Zhao also didn't answer the question. "It's the premiere tomorrow. Currently, the advance ticket sales aren't very good." Chen Zhao took out the lucky coin and handed it to Stephen. "You know how to use it." "Can I use it now?" That's enough." Stephen pricked his finger with a small knife and dripped his blood onto the coin. "Is it as effective as last time?" "It won't be worse than last time. In fact, the effect of the lucky coin is something that can already be done. Your ability, fame, and influence all determine the effect of the lucky coin. Compared to the last movie, your ability, fame, and influence are worlds apart. So this effect will only be better." Stephen kissed the lucky coin. "Just wait to get your share." "Oh, Stephen," Chen Zhao said. "Save more money in the next 1 or 2 years. If you have cash, leave it in the bank." "What for?" Stephen turned his head to look at Chen Zhao. "I have a super big project." "Super big project? How big?" "If I invest alone, I'll have to mortgage all my assets to the bank." Stephen gasped. "You can make money?" "I think it should be fine," Chen Zhao said. Stephen would not ask stupid questions like why he should share it with others if he could make money. Their relationship did not need to ask such questions. Of course, Stephen would not make up his mind just because of Chen Zhao's casual words. Even though they were already very close, Qin Zhao wanted at least half of Stephen's wealth as an investment. No one would make up their mind just because of some vague words. Of course, Qin Zhao only wanted him to save money. Putting cash in the bank would indeed cause some losses. However, this loss was completely within Stephen's acceptable range. His relationship with Chen Zhao was also enough for Stephen to trust Chen Zhao and temporarily put the money in the bank. "What exactly are you going to invest in?" "Tourism, I guess." "When will it start?" "Before the end of next year at the latest. I can't reveal too much now." "Okay." Stephen nodded. "Oh, are you really not going to the premiere? You know I hate those kinds of events." "Fine." Stephen did not force it. Moreover, Chen Zhao was not an entertainment star. There was no point in attending the premiere. "But Gaia seems very busy," Stephen said. "I asked her about the publicity trip, but she said she can't find time for the time being." She's indeed busy. Gaia was one of the main producers. She played the antagonist and was also the action director. According to the contract, Gaia had to follow the crew for publicity. However, Chun Zhao, Steven, and Raspa were the producers, while Gaia was one of them. No one would make things difficult for Gaia with the contract. At least come to the premiere tomorrow, Steven said. Fine, Chun Zhao said helplessly. I'll have her attend the premiere tomorrow. Just then, Steven's phone rang. Hey, Raspa, what's up? Steven, our movie's premiere has broken the record, Raspa called out excitedly. You're right. What? Broke the record? How is that possible? Steven sat up abruptly. Didn't we only do 5 million before? I just checked with the pre-sale channel. They said that our pre-sale has always been very high, but there's a system error. That's why it's very low on the website. It only shows the first 2 days of pre-sale. In reality, our pre-sale has already exceeded 50 million. Raspa could not hide his excitement. The pre-sale had broken the record. This was already a sign of the movie's success. Even if the movie was just for the three of them to entertain, who wouldn't want their movie to be successful? The standard for a movie's success was the proof of the commercial box office. Steven sucked in a breath of cold air. Did our ticket sales really reach $50 million? Yeah, I can't even imagine it. Chapter 1746. Steven's new movie, Kidnapped, suddenly became a huge news item before it was released. The pre-sales for Kidnapped had already reached $52 million US, breaking the pre-sales record. In just one day, this news swept the headlines of all the major entertainment companies. The new movie, Kidnapped, was based on a real case. The people involved in this case were the director of the movie, Steven, and one of the investors, Raspa. At that time, this incident had already swept across America and even the world. After all, Steven's fame and influence were too great. Furthermore, Kidnapping had always used that real case as a selling point for publicity. They claimed that Kidnapped would reveal more inside information that the police didn't expose at that time. As one of the people involved, Steven naturally had the absolute right to speak. Using the news of breaking the pre-sales record, the producer and distributor of Kidnapped once again hyped up that case. On the day of the premiere, the pre-sales had already reached $80 million US. This made all the other movies released at the same time feel like crying wolf. That was because Steven's new movie would be released, which meant that their box office would be stolen. Even movies aimed at different audiences were greatly affected. For example, the horror movie Death Foreseen that was released last week. It was completely different from Steven's new movie, and the audience was also completely different. However, Death Foreseen, which had a box office of $5 million US the day before, had already dropped by 70% to $35 million US the day before. The drop was shocking. It was like jumping off a building. Originally, among the 6 major companies, there were 2 mid to low budget movies that were used to attack Kidnapped. But within a day, there was no news of these 2 movies. It was said that the distributors of the 2 movies planned to change their release dates at the last minute to avoid Kidnapped, because they were also scared by Kidnapped's momentum. Before the premiere tonight, Kidnapped's pre-sales might very well exceed $100 million US. Although Portia was in the crew now, she couldn't help but be bombarded with information about Kidnapped, because in the production crew, they were all discussing Kidnapped. Be it the actors or the crew, they were all discussing it. Portia couldn't help but fantasize about when she could also participate in Steven's movie. Of course, Portia also knew that it was almost impossible, even if she was one of the main characters in James' movie. But there was still a huge gap between James and Steven. Steven used a shocking pre-sales result to defend his dignity as the world's top director. Portia scrolled through the entertainment news on her phone. Almost all of them were news about kidnapping or the actual incident at that time. Portia, it's your turn. Put your phone away. Just then, a crew member came over to inform her. How unprofessional. I really don't understand what Mr. James is thinking, Eliza said jealously. Of course. Only Portia could hear her voice. She had not left the set today because she still had scenes to shoot. Although Eliza had fewer scenes than Portia, her filming time was a day longer than Portia's. As long as Eliza's scenes were more scattered, there were more people who acted with her. The filming method of the film crew was to gather the parts of a scene to film together. It was possible that the opening and ending scenes were actually filmed on the first day. After shooting 2 scenes, Portia let out a sigh of relief. As a newcomer, it was very difficult for him to take on an important role. There were more than 20 NGs in her 2 scenes, but because she was personally selected by James to join the cast, so no one made things difficult for her. Only Eliza kept looking at Portia with jealousy. Just then, Portia received a call. Portia picked up the phone and saw that it was from Gaia. Hey, Portia, are you free tonight? Tonight? I'm afraid I don't have time. Because Portia had a night scene with the same scene that was also going to be filmed today. So Portia could not leave the set at all. What's up? The crew I was in wants me to attend the premiere. I want to find a female companion. Gaia remembered that Portia was interested in Hollywood, so she planned to take Portia to the red carpet. Female companion? You're a female yourself. Portia was speechless. It'll be more troublesome if I find a male companion. With Gaia's temperament, it would be really embarrassing to walk the red carpet with a pretty boy. There were many men in the gym who wanted to walk the red carpet with Gaia, but Gaia was not interested in any of them. I don't have time. I have a very important job tonight and can't leave, Portia said. If you don't have time, then forget it. Gaia did not need Portia. Her assistant, Ola, could also be her female companion. Portia hung up the phone after saying her blessings. Then she went back to filming. Portia was busy until 8 o'clock at night. When she got home, it was already 9 o'clock at night. This was the first time Portia felt the fatigue of filming. She was only a side character and was already under so much pressure. If it were the real main characters, they would have to film 10 times more than her. How much pressure would they have to face? Portia turned on the TV again and switched to the entertainment news. The entertainment news was broadcasting the premiere of Kidnapped. Portia became more and more envious. When could she be like those stars? That night, many young people like Portia, who dreamed of becoming a Hollywood star, fell asleep with their hearts full of fantasies. The next day, Portia woke up early in the morning and was once again flooded by the news of Kidnapped. It was all about Kidnapped breaking the box office record again, reaching $81 million. Breaking the box office record was different from pre-sales. The $81 million of pre-sales doubled the original record. She could imagine how this movie would wreak havoc on the big screens all over the world in the next 3 to 4 weeks. I'll watch this movie sometime, Portia muttered to herself. But then she suddenly thought of Gaia. Right? The movie that Gaia participated in was released yesterday too. I should go support Gaia's movie. Portia then realized that she did not know what movie Gaia was participating in. Could it be that Gaia was embarrassed to tell her? That's right. She participated in a movie that failed completely. It was indeed embarrassing to tell her. It was better not to trouble her. Chapter 1747. Portia finished the day's filming. It was much smoother than yesterday. She seemed to get into the mood more easily. But as soon as she got into the mood, all her scenes were completed. Portia rested in the crew and watched the other actors. She mainly wanted to learn. Portia's acting skills and abilities were the lowest in the entire crew. This was a well-known fact. But she had James as her backer. In fact, Portia didn't even know. James wasn't her backer. In the past 2 days, the crew had been saying that Portia had slept with James. Portia knew it was a rumor, but she couldn't do anything about it. Even if she explained, no one would believe her. She also knew who started the rumor. It was definitely Eliza's work. Pa! Just then, someone patted Portia's shoulder heavily. Portia was watching the filming in front. Caught off guard, she was almost scared out of her wits. "Hi, Portia, you're here." Portia turned around and realized that it was Gaia. "Gaia, why are you here?" "I should be the one asking you that. Why are you here? Did Chin send you here?" Gaia asked in confusion. At this moment, Elisa saw Gaia's face and immediately went up to her. "Portia, you've brought an irrelevant person to the crew again, and she's even disrupting the filming process. Do you really think that no one can stop you?" Elisa raised her voice on purpose, as if she was afraid that the crew didn't know her. Portia blushed and whispered, "Gaia, let's go. Let's talk over there. You go first." "I have something to do," Gaia said. "What? You don't think I'm here for you, do you?" Gaia glanced at Elisa. "Who's this idiot woman? Who are you calling an idiot woman? Do you know where this is?" Elisa raised her voice even higher. This time, she really affected the progress of the filming. "Let's take a 10-minute break." James stood up from the director's chair and walked over. "Ms. Gaia, hello. You're here." "Hello, Mr. James." Gaia shook hands with James. Gaia and James were not familiar with each other. During the filming of Abduction, James had come over to help with a few scenes, including Gaia's scenes. In addition, Gaia was the motion director for Abduction, so they had interacted before. This time, James also needed some action support. He had a good impression of Gaia. Gaia was a very creative person when it came to choreography. That was why he had asked Stephen for Gaia's contact information. Elisa's expression changed when she saw that Gaia actually knew James, and that James was the one who called her over. Portia was also surprised that Gaia knew James. "Ms. Gaia is the choreographer I hired. Your name is Elisa, right? You'd better keep a low profile in the crew. Don't think that I don't know what you're up to." James glanced at Elisa. He was just too lazy to ask about Elisa's little tricks, but it did not mean that he was completely unaware of them. James had been an assistant director for more than 20 years. He knew the dirty tricks in a crew like the back of his hand. If it was not for the bigger picture, he would have just chased Elisa away. James would rather have an actress like Portia, who did not know anything but kept a low profile. He would not have an actress like Elisa, who only had a little bit of experience and acted lawlessly in the crew. Gaia's visit this time was purely due to their friendship. She did not receive a single cent in return. It was completely voluntary. Who was Gaia? She might not have been famous in the past, but she was not completely unknown now. Abduction was like a box office record shredder. Box office records were broken one after another. For example, the first day box office yesterday. Abduction had already broken the first day box office and reached $150 million. It had reached $150 million US, and on all the major media platforms, Kidnap's ratings were also very high. Now, no one could guess where Abduction's ending point would be. Several movies had already quietly changed their release dates, all to avoid Abduction's sharpness. And Gaia, as an important character and also the choreographer, also received a lot of attention. To put it bluntly, Gaia's current status was higher than most of the actors in this crew. "Gaia, I'm sorry for offending the actors just now." Gaia shrugged. "It's fine. Let's talk about the filming." "Portia, I'll go first. We'll talk when we're free." "Okay." Portia nodded somewhat stiffly. After James and Gaia left, Portia looked at Elisa mockingly. No matter how happy you were, you would still be the one who suffered in the end. Elisa was even more furious. She realized that she always suffered in front of Portia. It seemed that from the day of the audition, she could not gain any advantage over Portia. Portia did not leave. Instead, she stayed with the crew. Only then did she know that Gaia was the choreographer hired by James. Their movie, Apocalypse Now, was not an action movie, so they did not hire an action director. Gaia's work was not much. It was just a few ordinary fighting scenes. Portia waited until the crew finished before looking for Gaia. "Gaia, let's have dinner together." "Okay." Gaia nodded. By the way, do you want to watch the movie I'm in? Sure. Since Gaia invited her, Portia would not refuse. Actually, she also wanted to see what movie Gaia was in. But she also knew that all the movies that were released at the same time as Kidnapped had become cannon fodder. The movies that were released the week before Kidnapped had their box office halved again and again. The daily box office fell by more than 80%. If it was a small, unknown production, the outcome would be even more tragic. It might not even reach 100,000 US dollars in a single day. It was even possible that they wouldn't even get a screening. That was the scary thing about Kidnapped. The media was singing praises. Even the competitors in the box office gave up. Now that Steven was in the limelight, no one wanted to be on bad terms with him. Even the big six of Hollywood wanted to work with Steven. Although they were sniping Steven's movies, it did not mean that they were his enemies. Sniping other movies was a tradition in Hollywood. After all, everyone was in the same industry. Also, they were trying to prevent Steven's studio from getting bigger. Chapter 1748. After dinner, Portia and Gaia went to a movie theater. After getting out of the car, Portia saw Gaia put a hoodie on her head and a cap on top of it. Seeing Gaia's behavior, Portia secretly laughed. Gaia's action looked like a superstar going to a public place. Did she think she was a superstar? Of course, Portia did not point it out. However, before entering the theater, Portia suddenly saw the trailer of Abduction playing on the big screen at the entrance. In the trailer, she happened to see a figure. It was only a few seconds, but the appearance of the figure was full of power. Gaia? Portia's mouth fell open as she looked at the big screen in shock. Although the scene had already passed, Portia could not calm down for a long time. That was Gaia, right? That was Gaia in the scene just now, right? Gaia directly landed on the roof of the kidnapper's car and killed the two bodyguards in a cruel and violent way. Then, she grabbed Steven's actor by the neck and lifted him in the air. She even said a line, "Good evening, great director." Gaia's movie was Abduction. She was also the motion director for Abduction. Portia's face was full of shock. How was that possible? Gaia actually played a very important role in such a heavyweight movie. No wonder. No wonder Gaia wore a cap. Portia was still in a state of shock as she watched the entire movie. The movie was very exciting. To an amateur like Portia, this was the perfect commercial movie. Gaia had a lot of scenes, and she was also the only person who had tortured the three main characters in the movie. At the same time, she was also the main antagonist's top fighter. Every time she attacked, it was full of explosive visual impact, even a kind of extreme beauty of power. In Abduction, the three main characters were the two old men who played Rasfi and Steven, and the Chinese bodyguard. The two old men's characters were very clever. They were old friends with many years of grudges, and they competed with each other. Although Gaia was the antagonist because of the character setting and the heavy editing, Gaia had a slight tendency to be the antagonist. Her role and strength were very important. In the beginning, she defeated the bodyguard. In the middle, she fought the bodyguard to a draw. In the end, the bodyguard defeated Gaia in an explosive battle. All three clashes left a deep impression on the audience. After watching the movie, Portia and Gaia went home separately. Portia was still in a state of shock. On Sunday morning, Portia subconsciously checked yesterday's box office rankings again. Of course, Kidnapped was as stable as a mountain. The box office earnings were very stable, maintaining at 130 million US dollars. The box office for the past 2 days had reached 360 million US dollars. If today's box office earnings continued to exceed 100 million US dollars, then the box office earnings for Kidnapped could possibly double the original box office earnings for the first weekend. Currently, the overseas box office results had not been released yet. They would have to wait until tomorrow. Now, the entire Hollywood was waiting for the overseas and North American box office results. On Monday, the North American and global box office results were released. Without a doubt, Kidnapped dominated the North American box office for a single week, with an advance of 81 million US dollars, 150 million US dollars on the first day, 130 million US dollars on Saturday, 120 million US dollars on the weekend, and a total of 481 million US dollars. It was close to the previous record for the first weekend, Star Wars, as 250 million US dollars in its opening weekend. The global box office earnings were even crazier. Excluding the North American region, the global box office earnings reached 650 million US dollars in the first weekend. China, which was the largest box office outside of North America, also performed well. The 2 billion renminbi box office earnings were equivalent to 330 million US dollars in USD. The North American and global box office earnings reached 131 billion US dollars. Crazy! The entire Hollywood went crazy. The global box office earnings exceeded 1 billion US dollars in the first weekend. Could there be anything crazier than this? But such a crazy thing happened last weekend. Steven not only defended his dignity as the world's #1 director, he was also acknowledged and recognized. Wang He became famous overnight, although he had a bit of fame in China before this. But it was completely different now. In the past, he was only considered a new generation actor in China, a B-list celebrity. But now, he was likely to become the holder of the global box office earnings record. Meanwhile, the film crew and Wang He had already started their promotional tour in China. In China, Wang He was, of course, the main character. In fact, his promotional priority was even higher than Steven's. After all, China was Wang He's home ground, and the Chinese audience's recognition of Wang He was much higher than others. Not returning home after getting rich was like walking at night in brocade clothes. Wang He's promotional tour in China could be said to be as high-profile as possible. The Chinese media also did their best to praise Wang He, treating him as the new king of the Chinese entertainment industry. On Wednesday, Steven suddenly came to Mingyue Villa. His assistant and bodyguards even delivered big and small bags to Mingyue Villa. Steven, weren't you busy with the promotional tour? Have you finished your promotional tour in Asia? How is that possible? I remember that you only arrived in China the day before yesterday. Even if you were Superman, you couldn't have run to all the promotional spots in Asia, right? I had no choice. I only went to 2 cities in China and ran back overnight. Steven's face was full of fatigue. But under Steven's tired face, there was also a hint of excitement. Why? Are you sick? I don't see how you're sick. I'm not sick. I just came here to hide for a few days. Steven said helplessly. Do you know how many investors came to me the moment I arrived in China? After I left China, I went straight back to Los Angeles, but my door was already blocked by reporters and many investors. I feel like the whole world has gone crazy. Then I'll help you destroy the lucky coin. Then you won't have to worry about this. Piss off. Steven rolled his eyes. This was his happiness problem. Only an idiot wouldn't want it. How much can our movie earn in the end? Can the global box office exceed 3 billion? Definitely 3 billion. Let's see if it can exceed 4 billion now. How much money will the 3 of us get in the end? After deducting the commission from the theaters and distributors, we'll get about half of the box office in North America. The global box office is more complicated. Each region's share is different, so we have to calculate it. But we'll definitely get 10 times the profit of our initial investment, Steven said. Chin, let's work together on the next movie. Let's talk about it later. If you make such a foreign movie again, you'll become the public enemy of Hollywood. 9 Heavens, Divine Emperor. Chapter 1749. Steven thought about it. That was true. It was enough to play outside the circle once or twice. If he played too much, he might be ostracized by Hollywood. Even as the legitimate king of directors, he couldn't go against Hollywood's rules. You should rest for a while, Qin Zhao said. After all, my lucky coins are limited. I only have a few now. If you make 1 movie a year, I won't have many coins for you to spend. Stephen thought about it. That was true. Moreover, Chen Zhao had invested in the movie this time, so he'd given him 2 lucky coins. Why would Chen Zhao give him one next time? In the last movie, Chen Zhao had given him a lucky coin unconditionally to save him. Stephen calmed down very quickly. He knew better than anyone the value of a lucky coin. Under normal circumstances, would the box office have such a huge chance of exploding? That was clearly impossible. Stephen secretly made up his mind. He had to get Chen Zhao to invest in his next movie. With his influence and charisma, he could negotiate with any of the big 6. He also had the power to bring money into the production. Without a doubt, Chen Zhao was his best and most important friend. "Hi, Rasfa. Do you want something to drink?" Feilai walked out. "Please give me a bottle of nameless wine," Stephen said. "I want to celebrate with Chen Zhao." "As you wish." Feilai turned and walked back in. She'd also paid attention to Kidnap's box office. She knew that Stephen was overjoyed. "By the way, can this movie enter the Oscars?" Chen Zhao asked. "I'm afraid not. No matter how high the box office is, it's undeniable that it's purely commercial," Stephen said with a bitter smile. "Fine." Just then, Stephen started taking off his clothes. "What are you doing?" "I'm going to change into my swimming trunks. I'm going to swim for a while." "Fuck, go to your room and change. If you dirty Feilai and my little princess's eyes, I'll crush your dick." Portia parked her car in the garage. She saw a few unfamiliar cars in the garage. They shouldn't be Chen Zhao's cars. There were also a few people going in and out of the elevator. They seemed to be moving luggage. Did Mingyue Villa have guests? Portia went to the living room and saw Chen Zhao talking to an old man in swimming trunks in the yard. Portia rubbed her eyes. That old man is Mr. Stephen? The king of directors. Portia rushed out of the living room and into the yard. It really is Mr. Stephen. "Boss," Portia called out. Stephen and Chen Zhao turned around and saw Portia's excited face. "Mr. Stephen." "Hi. Hello." Portia couldn't calm herself down and stuttered. "Chen, who is she?" "My personal assistant, an amateur actress." "Oh, I helped her get a role in James' new movie." Portia's heart skipped a beat. Chen Zhao? Was it her boss who helped her get the role? "Oh, I see." Stephen looked at Portia. "Do you want me to give her a role in my new movie?" "It depends," Chen Zhao said casually. "Who knows if she's still working beside me when you're filming?" Portia had already made up her mind to stay by Chen Zhao's side. Everything else aside, Chen Zhao's words alone were enough. She had to stay. As long as she stayed, she would have a chance to get a role in Stephen's new movie. What was Stephen's movie? It was a star-making machine. Portia couldn't imagine that Chen Zhao and Stephen were such good friends. It seemed that Chen Zhao only needed to say one word to get a role in Stephen's movie. And Portia had already felt it from James. With one word from Chen Zhao, James called her personally. Oh, Gaia had mentioned it in Tokyo. Chen Zhao had invested in a movie that she'd acted in. Did that mean that kidnapping was the movie Chen Zhao had invested in? Oh my. Chen Zhao could earn hundreds of millions of dollars with this movie, right? His influence in Hollywood was so great. Portia couldn't believe it. So her greatest resource was right beside her. How could he be so slow to realize it? Portia watched as Chen Zhao and Stephen ran to the yacht with their arms around each other's shoulders and then jumped into the sea. Unfortunately, she couldn't get close to Stephen. After all, Portia was only Chen Zhao's personal assistant. Even if she tried to get close to him, Stephen might not even respond. "Stephen, do you want to see my new pet?" Chen Zhao looked at Stephen, smiling. Soaking in the sea, Stephen raised his head. Hearing Chen Zhao's words, his interest was piqued. He knew that Chen Zhao liked to raise strange pets. Moreover, all of them had been trained by Chen Zhao to be extremely obedient. "Sure. Is it at Mingyue Villa?" "No, it's in the sea." "Sea? Dolphins?" Chen Zhao chuckled. "I have dolphins too, but there are others." Just then, The dolphin family appeared not far from Stephen. "Wow, they're really dolphins!" Stephen exclaimed in surprise. "I love dolphins." The dolphin family swam to Stephen. "Stephen, do you remember that groundbreaking summer movie?" "Of course. You're talking about Jaws, right?" Jaws wasn't just a classic monster movie. It was also the groundbreaking summer movie. In the 1970s, the concept of summer movies didn't exist in Hollywood yet. It was the release of Jaws that created the hottest summer season in North America. From then on, the summer movie became a period that all the major Hollywood film companies fought over. In addition to the summer holidays for students, it was also a break period for major sporting events. Therefore, the public turned their attention to the movies. "Why did you bring this up?" Stephen asked, confused. "You'll know the reason soon." Chen Zhao grinned. Stephen suddenly shuddered. He had a bad feeling about this. Just then, the dolphin family, who were having fun, suddenly dispersed. Stephen looked into the distance and saw a huge fin appear on the surface of the sea. Instinctive fear spread through Stephen's body. "Shark, shark, shark, run!" Stephen screamed and swam toward the yacht with all his might. Splash! Suddenly, Stephen heard the sound of a wave behind him. Then a huge shadow flew past his head. Stephen looked up and saw the huge white belly of the fish. Splash! The big white shark, Old Guan, jumped over Stephen's head. Stephen was stunned for a moment. Chapter 1750. Stephen looked around for Chen Zhao with his mouth open. He realized that Chen Zhao was looking at him with evil intentions. In that instant, Stephen suddenly came to his senses. "Chen, is this your new pet?" "How is it? Are you scared?" Chen Zhao grinned at Stephen. Stephen glowered at Chen Zhao. "Do you know how old I am?" He roared. "You know, I might be scared to death. If I had an AK-47 right now, I'd just shoot you. This is my territory. Do you think anyone can threaten Fei Lai, little Jerlin, and little Larissa without my permission?" Stephen thought about it. That seemed to be the case. Moreover, he knew that Chen Zhao had some extraordinary abilities. Just then, the 5 tiger generals appeared. Although Stephen still had a lingering fear, he was not as panicked as before. This was also because he trusted Chen Zhao and his abilities. Once again, Stephen experienced Chen Zhao's magic-like control over animals. Chen Zhao didn't need to say anything. Stephen told Chen Zhao what he wanted to express. Then, Chen Zhao could make the shark do all kinds of things with a glance. "Chin, are you planning to make that girl a star? If she has the qualifications, it doesn't matter if she becomes a star." Chen Zhao didn't think that there was anything wrong with wanting to be a star. Being a star was obviously better than being a personal assistant. This was a universal value. Could he use his charisma to make Portia give up her dream of becoming a star and focus on being his personal assistant? Stop joking. If Portia really did that, Chen Zhao might not even dare to use her. It was definitely an idiotic decision. Of course, Chen Zhao would only give her a push at most. Chen Zhao wasn't her father. He couldn't always help her. As for whether Portia could become a star in the future, Chen Zhao didn't care. If she became a star, he could just be an assistant. If she couldn't become a star, she could just stay by his side and be an assistant. No one couldn't live without her. Since he had resources and had a good impression of Portia, he could help her. He could just go with the flow and help her. Chen Zhao didn't plan on having Portia work for him for the rest of her life. That was even more unrealistic. "By the way, what's Gaia doing recently?" "She's going to Norway," Chen Zhao said casually. "Norway. Why are you going there?" "Work." Stephen stopped talking. Didn't Gaia own a fitness center? What was she doing in Norway? "You said a few days ago that you want me to save money for the past 2 years. What exactly is it? Can't you tell me a little more?" "No." Chen Zhao shook his head. "Put it in the bank and take 2 years of interest." In any case, even if this matter fell through in the end, Stephen puts money in the bank to depreciate minus the interest. Even if it was $1 billion USD, Stephen would only lose 10 million USD at most. This amount of money was nothing to Stephen, especially since they had just earned a large sum of money. If Stephen were to accept an endorsement or do an advertisement, he would be paid $20 to $30 million. Moreover, Stephen also had endorsements. Although he was the director, he was the most influential director. The king of directors, the god of directors, the king of box office, and so on. Whenever he appeared in front of the media, even a sneeze would make the headlines. So his endorsement fees couldn't even be compared to A-list celebrities. Of course, as a product spokesperson, there was a contract that stipulated how many times he had to appear in front of the media every year. Stephen wanted to stay at Chen Zhao's place for a long time, but in reality he was thinking too much. He brought luggage of all sizes. If it were a normal family, they would be moving. In the end, he was called over by Rasfa the next day. Rasfa was so busy now that his feet couldn't even touch the ground. He was the investor of Kidnapped, the party involved in the previous case, and PLM's distributor. He kept accepting interviews from all kinds of media outlets. In the past, as a CEO, he wouldn't accept interviews. But Kidnapped's returns were too high. He was also asked to cooperate with the publicity and had to participate in all kinds of interviews. In the end, as the main publicity point, Stephen actually hid in Mingyue Villa. How could Rasfa bear it? I'm here helping you with the publicity, but you're hiding in Chen Zhao's house to enjoy yourself? Rasfa sent a few burly men to drag Stephen out of Mingyue Villa. One had to admit that Stephen's influence was huge. He was also in the middle of a volcano. After disappearing for 2 days, the moment he reappeared in front of the media, Stephen was once again on the front page of the various newspapers. Not to mention Stephen appearing in person. Even if some media outlet revealed the direction of Stephen's next movie, it would still be on the headlines. Stephen was interviewed for an announcement and hadn't left the TV station yet. DSN, one of the big six, came to him. Stephen could pick the script or write it himself. The screenwriter would still pay for it. The casting and editing rights would all be given to him, as long as Stephen was willing to use their brand. Of course, Stephen listened to Chen Zhao's suggestion. He planned to rest for a while first. It wasn't just DSN. The other companies also acted upon hearing the news. Not just the big six, but the other second-tier film companies also wanted to pull Stephen into their camp. Even the big management companies were frantically trying to contact Stephen. Stephen had his own manager, but in Hollywood, it was normal to have a manager. Which company didn't want Stephen to join them? If Stephen joined their company, it would be a piece of cake to get 2 or 3 important roles in every movie. Even a sly old fox like Stephen couldn't handle it. It was mainly because the box office explosion this time was too shocking. All the box office records were destroyed like paper. A brand new, almost unshakable box office record was erected there. Everyone was saying that only Stephen could rewrite the records again. Chen Zhao was very free these 2 days. He stayed at home and counted his money. Kidnapping's box office on weekdays was still very high. It was certain that it would win the box office for the second week. In the first 5 weekdays, it got another $350 million in North American box office. The total global box office was close to $2 billion. Just then, West told Chen Zhao that they were ready to go to Norway. This was the second time after the trip to Tokyo that they were all moving out. Chapter 1751. Chen Zhao arrived at the headquarters. West, when do you plan to go to Norway? As soon as possible, West said. West said, a week ago there was news from Norway. Someone found a giant in the Norwegian forest. A week ago, Chen Zhao asked. Has no one succeeded yet? Not yet. Rumor has it that the giant has power as terrifying as Tamamo no Me. Chen Zhao furrowed his brows. Will it be too difficult? Chen Zhao was still worried. The supernatural organization's lineup was complete now. Chen Zhao was very satisfied with this. Chen Zhao didn't want to see any casualties. Chen Zhao wasn't like the person in charge of the counterterrorism department. He wouldn't let half of the psionic team die to build confidence. So, Chen Zhao wanted him to come along. If something went wrong, Chen Zhao would attack directly. To put it bluntly, Chen Zhao was like a parent. President, we agreed that you won't come this time. But, President, sometimes you have to learn to let go and let us face the danger ourselves. Okay, West, I want you to promise to bring everyone back in one piece. Chen Zhao looked at West solemnly. I mean, every single one of them. If anything changes, call me immediately. I'll fly to Norway directly. I know. West was very satisfied with Chen Zhao as a responsible president. He'd chosen Chen Zhao back then, and Chen Zhao hadn't let him down. But Chen Zhao had his own problems. He was too protective of the people in the association, a team that didn't know how to face danger and thought of Chen Zhao first when there was danger would never achieve greatness. Actually, to West, the psionic team's choice wasn't wrong. Through casualties and danger, the psionic team could grow. Of course, if West and Chen Zhao said to let half of them die first, Chen Zhao would probably fill the sea with his dead first. West didn't really want to use death to inspire courage in his own people. The choice of the Scarlet Red mission had been discussed and researched with Chen Zhao many times. West finally convinced Chen Zhao. Tomorrow, the entire association would go to Norway. Of course, Aduz wouldn't go this time. Adonis intended to stay and watch the house. At this moment, Klaus came in from outside. President, I've completed the task you gave me last time. In the next 2 or 3 days, someone will be coming over to install the speed measuring device. However, we're flying to Norway tomorrow, so I've left your contact information. Okay, I'll transfer the rest of the payment to you. You can transfer it to the arms dealer later. Then, Chen Zhao left the headquarters. Edos was playing with Gaia's son, Evans. The old man was the mascot of the association. Coupled with his amiable personality, he was very popular in the association. Even the Evil Spirit Society had a few buddies who could play. When he was bored, he dragged a few evil spirits and ran out to subdue demons. Occasionally, he would do some harmless swindles and pretend to be an otherworldly expert. Uncle Chen. Seeing Chen Zhao walk over, Evans immediately greeted him. Evans had grown a lot taller. He was almost 7 years old. Chen Zhao touched Evans' head. President, Edos greeted Chen Zhao too. Edos, you have to work hard when they're not here. I'm not usually at the headquarters. If there's any problem, call me immediately. Okay, I know. Edos nodded. If something really happens and I can't get here in time, release all the demons you sealed, Chen Zhao said. But nothing would really happen in the association. The association wasn't completely empty either. Most of the evil spirit groups were still here. Only Pamela and the Wailing Banshees went to Norway. Just then, Chen Zhao received Ethan's call. Chen, there's a client. Do you want to take it? Ethan was one of Chen Zhao's closest friends. Chen Zhao's current wealth couldn't be hidden from Ethan. However, Ethan didn't often introduce clients to Chen Zhao. It was mainly because the client's price was low. For Chen Zhao's current income, it was really meaningless. Moreover, there weren't many clients who could pay a high price. Ethan and Chen Zhao's relationship hadn't changed since they'd started working together. Ethan would still introduce clients to Chen Zhao and take a 20% commission. Neither of them thought about changing the commission. Their relationship wouldn't change because of the commission either. What's the client offering? $2 million, Ethan said. Okay, give me the address, Chen Zhao said. This patient is in big trouble. What kind of trouble? I've heard of him before. He seems to have ALS. Sclerosis, one of the 3 incurable diseases of the century. It was also known as the hardest disease to cure. The other 2 incurable diseases are AIDS and cancer. There had been some results in the treatment of these 2 diseases. There was even a chance of success, but there was still no progress on ALS. Chen Zhao frowned. He hadn't seen a patient with ALS before. He didn't even know much about pathology. He only knew the basics. ALS was also known as motor neuron disease. It could be inherited. It couldn't be prevented or treated early. It couldn't be alleviated or even slowed down the deterioration. I understand, Qin Zhao said. Ethan told himself in advance, mainly to prepare himself mentally. Someone who could afford to pay $2 million USD for treatment was naturally wealthy. The patient this time lived on the coast of Malibu. It was one of the wealthiest areas in Los Angeles. It was only second to Beverly Hills. It was also a place where Hollywood celebrities gathered. Malibu Beach was also known as the beach where it was easy to meet celebrities. Just like Beverly Hills, there were luxurious villas and manors everywhere. Chen Zhao arrived at the coast of Malibu and found his destination. There was a huge manor with a huge area and a circular, 5-story building. All of this showed how luxurious the manor was. Chen Zhao explained his purpose to the security guard outside the gate and was allowed to enter. Qin Zhao admired the interior along the way. It was different from Mingyue Villa's scenery and design. This place had a bit of European beauty. Led by the butler, Chen Zhao entered the huge mansion. Gold and white interweaved to form an extravagant and intense Rococo style. Qin Zhao strolled along the winding corridors. Finally, he came to a living room. In the living room, Chen Zhao saw someone familiar. It was Raspa's health consultant, Rydra. When Rydra saw Chen Zhao, she wasn't surprised at all. Beside Rydra sat a woman in her 60s. Rydra, is he the doctor you strongly recommended? Chapter 1752. Rydra's gaze toward Qin Zhao was filled with unfriendliness. She could count the number of times she'd met Qin Zhao with one hand. However, every time they met, it was filled with humiliation. Rydra had to admit that she was an adult. Chen Zhao's medical skills were really good. Moreover, it was so good that it was unbelievable. It's him. Rydra nodded. Her gaze toward Qin Zhao was still filled with hatred. If there's someone in this world who can cure you, it can only be him. Ma, do you need treatment? Chen Zhao asked, putting down his toolbox. The old woman nodded slightly. Qin Zhao could tell that her body was a bit uncoordinated. However, before checking, Chen Zhao couldn't be sure if the old woman really had ALS. Some elderly diseases would also have this kind of uncoordinated feeling, such as muscle damage and osteoporosis. They would also make the elderly's body weak and uncoordinated in certain areas. Please sit, the old woman said. Qin Zhao glanced at Rydra and then sat beside the old woman. Can I check for you? Rydra took out a case report. It was over 100 pages thick. Qin Zhao glanced at Rhett. He was also surprised. Rydra had actually recommended him. Qin Zhao looked at the case report. He could understand it, but he couldn't. The old woman's name was Ellie Rodriguez Alexander. Qin Zhao didn't know the data or pathology of ALS, but the final conclusion of the case report was that it was in the early stage. The early stage of ALS wouldn't directly make the patient lose the ability to move. The first symptom was that the old woman's left arm would suddenly lose strength, lasting from a few minutes to half an hour. In the following half a year, the symptoms would worsen. The old woman's arms and legs would unpredictably lose strength. The old woman's breathing would also become difficult sometimes. The old woman looked at Chen Zhao. Sir, do you think there's still hope for me? Ma, Qin Zhao said honestly. I've never come into contact with a patient with ALS, so I don't have any relevant treatment plans or abilities. I'm afraid I can't help you. The old woman seemed to have expected this, but she couldn't hide her disappointment. After all, she also had hope. She'd hoped for a miracle. Chen Zhao's answer was not unexpected. Rydra's face darkened, and she asked in a questioning tone, Aren't you able to cure any illness? Why can't you cure ALS? Glancing at Rydra, Qin Zhao said indifferently, I never said that I can cure all illnesses. But you've cured so many incurable diseases. That's because I happen to know the cure. Rydra, forget it, the old woman said calmly. If he could be cured, then he would be cured. If he couldn't be cured, then he couldn't be cured. This kind of thing couldn't be forced out. ALS was not a disease or injury to a specific part of the body. Instead, it was neuronal damage, which meant that the key was in the neuronal tissue. Human muscles are made up of neurons that send signals to various parts of the body and then control the movements of the muscles. If the muscle cells of the human body were to be likened to a cell phone connected to countless signals, then the nerve tissue would be the main signal station. Since the main station had malfunctioned and could no longer connect or send signals, all these phones had turned into bricks. The pathology of ALS was completely different from other diseases. There was really nothing Chen Zhao could do. Chen Zhao stood up. I'm sorry. It's okay. Goodbye. Chen Zhao picked up his toolbox and left. Rydra looked at Chen Zhao's back, dissatisfaction in her eyes. Forget it, Rydra. The old woman patted Rydra's hand. Ethan, I failed. I couldn't cure that patient. Chen Zhao was also a bit disappointed. After all, this was the first time he'd encountered a helpless patient since coming to L. Hey, it's okay. Ethan also knew that he couldn't force Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao was in a bad mood. When he was on the highway, a black-tailed deer, also known as a mule deer, suddenly charged out from the inside. Chen Zhao immediately stepped on the brakes. The deer's movements were strange, as if its limbs were out of control. It crashed into the front of Chen Zhao's car and fell to the ground with a thud. Chen Zhao parked the car by the side of the road and got out to check the deer. The deer wasn't injured, but it couldn't get up. Its limbs kept kicking. Chen Zhao looked at the black-tailed deer in confusion. Chen Zhao rubbed his chin and thought for a while. The black-tailed deer looked like a patient with ALS. Chen Zhao went up to comfort it and then carried it to the back of the car. Dear, dear. When Jerlin saw Chen Zhao carry the deer back, she couldn't contain her excitement. The small pets at home couldn't satisfy her needs anymore. Now that she saw a deer, it immediately caught her attention. When the other pets saw the deer, they all surrounded it. Princess thought that Chen Zhao had brought them food. They were already drooling. Chen Zhao guessed that Princess had eaten the deer before. However, Chen Zhao still chased them away. The deer was so scared that it curled into a ball, not daring to get up. When Fei Lai saw the deer, she walked out with little Larissa. When little Larissa saw the deer, she had the same expression as her sister, joy and excitement. It was like seeing a new toy. Chin, are you going to adopt a new pet? Fei Lai didn't object. Their house was big enough. They could have any pets. As long as it wasn't a mouse. Fei Lai was very tolerant of other pets. I'm going to study it. You're going to dissect it. No, of course not. I just encountered a troublesome disease and happened to find this mule deer on the way. It seems to be the same as the patient I met before, so I brought it back. Is it sick? It looks pretty healthy. ALS, Chen Zhao said. Butler, search for ALS. ALS was a sudden disease at first. Then it would gradually spread and get worse, eventually turning into permanent paralysis. Patients with ALS would eventually die from breathing difficulties because they couldn't even maintain their airway muscles. Therefore, many patients would choose euthanasia. Even for church members, suicide was a great sin. Patients couldn't bear the despair and pain of losing control of their entire body. As the butler projected the search results on the wall, Chen Zhao had a deeper understanding of ALS. Chen Zhao picked up his phone and called For, do me a favor. I want all the cases related to ALS in your hospital. Chapter 1753. Neurons were nerve cells. They were the most basic structural and functional units of the nervous system. They were divided into cell bodies and projections. The cell bodies consisted of a nucleus, a cell membrane, and a cytoplasm. They could connect and integrate incoming and outgoing information. There were two types of projections, dendrites and axons. Dendrites were short and had many branches. They expanded and protruded from the cell bodies, forming a dendritic shape. They were used to receive impulses from other axons and transmit them to the cell bodies. Axons were long and had few branches. They were slender projections of uniform thickness and usually originated from the axon. They were used to receive external stimuli and then transmit them from the cell bodies. Apart from side branches, the axons formed branch-like nerve endings at the ends. The endings were distributed in certain tissues and organs, forming various nerve endings. The sensory endings formed various receptors. The motor endings were distributed in bones and muscles, forming the central nervous system. Chun Zhao pressed the deer to the ground and sent his celestial power into its body. However, the moment he did, the deer leaped up. The black-tailed deer leaped up fiercely. Its body seemed to have been injected with stimulants. It charged out, dashed to the cliff, and jumped down. Chun Zhao hurriedly rushed out and picked up the deer. What a joke! It was an extremely rare experimental material now. If he lost it, he wouldn't be able to find another one. Chun Zhao had seen the treatment plans for the patients with ALS that Four had sent over. Some patients had undergone electrical stimulation before. Basically, ALS meant that the nervous system couldn't send out signals. Thus, he used weak electricity to stimulate the nervous system. When he sent the celestial power into the deer's body, it felt like it had been electrocuted. It also seemed like it had been electrocuted. It seemed that this stimulation method really had some effect. However, the effect was difficult to control. He couldn't confirm the mechanism of the stimulation either. There were two reasons for ALS. One was the abnormal death of the nerve cells. For example, a signal station had been smashed. The communication company was going bankrupt and didn't pay the repairmen, so no one came to fix it. Sports injuries or the elderly were all like this. The other was hereditary. The nerve cells would shrink, which meant they were disabled. Chun Zhao wasn't sure if his celestial power had stimulated the nerve cells or sent signals on their behalf. Nerve cells controlled muscle movement. Basically, it was the same as a signal station sending signals to the user. The ultimate solution was to recover the nerve cells so that the central nervous system could move again. Repair the nerve cells. How? Nerve cells were distributed throughout the body. Acupuncture. Through acupuncture, immortal energy was transmitted into the body to stimulate the nerve cells to become active again. Malibu Menorah young man stood in front of Ellie Rodriguez Alexander. Grandmother. You're low hair? The old woman couldn't recognize him. After all, they hadn't seen each other for almost 20 years. The last time they met, Low Hill was only 2 years old. But then Low Hill's mother passed away. As for his father, he brought Lot Hill to emigrate to England. Since then, the old woman had never seen her grandson again. However, even after 20 years, the old woman could still vaguely see the shadows of her parents. "It's me, grandmother." Lothair nodded. "Where is your father?" "My father passed away 2 years ago." "Cancer," Lasir said. "I see. Do you have any plans now?" "I'm currently studying at East LA College," Lowhill said. "You arrived in Los Angeles a long time ago. Why did you only come to see me now?" The old woman's tone was a bit dissatisfied, although the old woman and Lowhill's father were at odds. But that was a grudge between the previous generation. She felt that Lowhill shouldn't be dragged into this. "Grandmother, I only recently found information about you from my father's belongings." Lowhill took out a few letters. The old woman felt relieved after seeing these letters. "Then you can stay here with me. Accompany me for a while." The old woman was already at the age of knowing her destiny. Now that she was seriously ill, her only hope was to enjoy family in the limited time she had. Lowhill was her only family in this world. The old woman was actually a bit happy. After all, she could see her family in the last moments of her life. In Lowhill, the old woman seemed to see the shadow of her daughter. Just then Rydra walked in. Rydra was stunned when she saw Lohil. Lohil nodded slightly at Rydra. Lohil, this is my health consultant, Rydra. This is my grandson, Lohil. Hello. Rydra nodded. Hello, Ms. Rydra. Rydra frowned discreetly. For some reason, she felt uncomfortable. And this discomfort came from Lohil. Meeting Rydra's gaze, Lohil's eyes squinted. But then, Lohil gave off a sunny aura as usual. Rydra, let's have lunch together. I've already asked the kitchen to prepare. Chen, come and help in the garage. For stood in the garage and called Qin Zhao. A while later, Feilai came down. For saw Feilai. Where's Chen? He's not free. For open the trunk. Feilai saw hundreds of files and medical forms. So many? That's why I asked Chen to help. Just then, another car entered the garage. Portia got out. Ms. Feilai, do you need help? You came just in time. Let's carry these up. Portia realized that they were all medical reports. Although she was confused, she still carried the reports with Feilai and Four. When Four and Portia reached the living room, they saw Qin Zhao in the yard. There was a mule deer before Qin Zhao. The two women's hearts raced. Qin Zhao wasn't dissecting the mule deer, was he? Qin, what are you doing? For asked, ignoring Four's question. Qin Zhao focused on performing acupuncture on the mule deer. Four and Portia saw that the mule deer's body was covered with needles as thin as hair. After a while, Qin Zhao finally raised his head. Four, when did you come? Four's face darkened. She just called Qin Zhao a few minutes ago. He'd forgotten so quickly. What are you doing? As you can see, Qin Zhao said, I picked it up on the road. It's a mule deer with ALS. Are you planning to conquer ALS now? I've never met a patient with ALS before. I only have some ideas, but it's still too early to conquer it. Portia felt that Qin Zhao was too good at bluffing. ALS? Even an outsider like her knew what kind of disease it was. Chapter 1754. But then, Qin Zhao and Four's conversation, Portia couldn't understand at all. She blurted out all sorts of technical terms. Portia felt like she was listening to a book from heaven. Why are you suddenly interested in ALS? For asked, is it because of this mule deer? Look, I'm very caring. He went to see a patient today and encountered his biggest challenge in his career, a patient with ALS. Feilai walked out with a few bottles of beer. Only Qin Zhao didn't take the beer. Feilai knew that Qin Zhao never drank beer at work. Boss, you pricked this deer with needles. Are you sure it won't die? Don't doubt the boss's ability. Qin Zhao glanced at Portia. To be honest, this kind of treatment was too exhausting. Plus, Qin Zhao wasn't confident. Qin Zhao started putting away the needles, one by one. The moment the last needle in the vagus nerve was withdrawn, the mule deer sprang up and crashed into Portia. Ah! Portia screamed in pain as she was knocked over. The mule deer continued running. It was about to hit Jerlin. In the end, a gigantic palm slapped over and sent the mule deer flying. Roar! Princess roared and bared her fangs and claws. The mule deer was so scared that it turned around and ran, burrowing into the bushes nearby. However, Minghua Villa was full of danger. A few seconds later, the mule deer ran out of the bushes in fear. Whoosh! A series of densely packed sounds came from the underbrush. Portia was also shocked. What's in there? Why do you care so much? Drink your beer. Qin Zhao glanced at Portia and dragged the mule deer to the ground by its neck. It was a female mule deer. She was close to adulthood, but she wasn't very strong. She was probably only 60 centimeters tall, and her slender legs kept kicking. Most of the pets in the house were bigger than her. Even those that were younger than it were all extremely fierce and vicious. After all, apart from King Kong, no one in the house was vegetarian. King Kong was a vegetarian, but it had a bad temper. Even though Qin Zhao had already comforted it, It was still in a state of fear and agitation. Chen Zhao's comforting was completely useless. This place was too scary. To it, this was hell. Hua hua. Just then, a rustling sound came from the grass. Raymond hid in the bushes. Portia's scalp went numb. "Boss, are there any pets in the bushes that I haven't seen before?" Portia asked nervously. For some reason, Portia felt terrified. Val knew what it was. As for Portia, there were still 2 pets in the Bright Moon Villa that she had yet to see. One of them was King Kong. King Kong usually played in the forest behind the Sandro National Park. The other one was Raymond. After shedding his skin last time, Raymond's body had grown a little exaggerated. That was why Raymond usually didn't see any visitors. Even Portia, who came here every day, did not know that there was such a terrifying existence in the Bright Moon Villa. "It's better if you don't know," Chen Zhao said, glancing at Portia. Hearing that, Portia was both scared and curious as she approached the bush. Suddenly, Portia's hand was tugged. "Portia, don't look," Feilai said. "You'll be scared." Last time Val had been scared. That was when she'd seen Raymond's body before. If Portia, who was completely unprepared, saw Raymond, who knew how she would feel. "It's okay. I'm brave," Portia said. Even she did not believe what she said. Portia finally pushed the bushes aside. She finally saw what was in the bushes. Raymond was right in front of her, and what scared her the most was that Raymond had a mule deer in his mouth. Portia was still scared, even though she'd been mentally prepared. However, the impact that Raymond had on her was too great. A colorful body, a terrifying snake head, and a scene of him eating. All of them were visually shocking. "Let's get to know each other. It's called Raymond," Feilai said. "Raymond, say hi to Portia. You've seen it before anyway." Suddenly, with a crunch, Raymond bit off half of the mule deer in his mouth and spat the other half at Portia's feet. With a thud, Portia sat on the ground. All the pets in the family were like Chen Zhao. They all had the bad habit of bullying strangers. Feilai went up to help Portia up. "You wanted to know it. Now you're scared again." Portia could not stand up. "If you don't listen, I'll feed you to Raymond. Do you understand?" Chen Zhao said. I understand." Chen Zhao looked at Portia. "I'm talking to the deer." "Why are you talking? How is it now?" Feilai asked. "I tried to repair its motor neurons, but I don't know how it's working." Chen Zhao patted the mule deer. "I need to observe it for a few days to be sure." Chen Zhao needed to see if the female mule deer would act up again. After injecting some immortal power into it, the mule deer was clearly very excited. Of course, the immortal power also expanded its senses and emotions, such as fear. However, the immortal power would not stay in its body forever. Chen Zhao wasn't sure if the motor neurons would decline again after being reactivated this time. Chen Zhao stroked the mule deer, and it gradually calmed down beside him. "Boss, if there's nothing else, I'll go first." "No," Chen Zhao interrupted Portia. Facing Chen Zhao's dominance, Portia could only give up. However, as long as she turned her back to the bush, she would feel goosebumps all over. She really did not understand where Chen Zhao had gotten such a scary pet. Also, wasn't he afraid that he and his family would be in danger? For the entire afternoon, Chen Zhao discussed medical knowledge with Feilai. Portia thought that she was highly educated and an intellectual. However, she could not even understand Chen Zhao and Feilai's conversation, let alone interrupt. "Feilai, is the boss still a doctor?" "He's an illegal doctor." "Illegal doctor? But he's so rich." "I'm interested," Feilai said matter-of-factly, just like how Chen Zhao would not stop her from returning to the coastal rescue team. Feilai would also not stop Chen Zhao from continuing to be an illegal doctor. So what if he was caught in the future? Chen Zhao had a large team of lawyers to help him get out. Chapter 1755. In the past 2 days, Chen Zhao focused all his attention on the little mule deer. In these 2 days, the little mule deer didn't get sick at all. Chen Zhao thought about it and decided to take the little mule deer to the hospital for a checkup. A regular veterinary hospital didn't have such equipment for neurological examinations. So, he had to go to a regular hospital. Chen Zhao contacted for and borrowed the hospital's equipment. The next day, Chen Zhao took the little mule deer to the hospital. Chen Zhao was already very familiar with Chantilly Hospital. After telling the director said it was fine. Director Kathiri was by Chen Zhao's side. "Mr. Chin, what's wrong with your pet?" "Neurological disease." Chen Zhao didn't elaborate. Kathiri didn't ask. He watched as the little mule deer was sent into the ring-shaped X-ray machine in the examination room. Just then, Chen Zhao's phone rang. "Hi, Chin, it's Alex." "Yes." "Do you know Rydra?" "Rydra? I think so. Why?" Chen Zhao asked. "She wants to see you," Alex said. "See me? Why would she call you to see me?" Chen Zhao was confused. Anyway, he didn't understand the logic behind it. His work phone was with Portia, and his personal phone was with him. He couldn't find Alex no matter what, right? Because she's in prison. What? She's in prison? What happened? Chen Zhao was confused. Wasn't she fine a few days ago? How did she end up in prison in a few days? Poison. Poison. Chen Zhao was even more confused. Who did she poison for? Ellie Rodriguez Alexander, the founder and largest shareholder of the world's largest shopping mall, the United Shopping Mall. She is currently unconscious and her life is in danger. Once Ellie Rodriguez Alexander dies, Rydra will be charged with first-degree murder. Chen Zhao frowned. Rydra poisoned? He wasn't familiar with her, but he didn't believe that Rydra would poison someone. "Does she want to see me?" "Yes." "You didn't ask her to do it, did you? If so, you better tell me the truth so I can help you get away with it." "Fuck off." The report wouldn't be out today, so Chen Zhao sent the deer home first. Coincidentally, the prison where Rydra was being held was under the jurisdiction of Caprice. Chen Zhao greeted Caprice. Then, under Caprice's arrangement, the two met in an isolation room. When he saw Rydra again, her face was full of fatigue. It seemed that she was in a very bad state of mind these 2 days. "Ms. Rydra, I heard that you wanted to see me. To be honest, I was really shocked when I heard that you were sent to prison. Tell me, what kind of grudge do you have with that Ali Rodriguez Alexander? You actually poisoned her?" Chen Zhao teased. "That's right." Rydra slowly raised her head. Her eyes were filled with despair and bitterness. "I didn't poison it. Do you believe me?" I don't believe you." Chen Zhao didn't know Rydra very well. The few times they met, they parted on bad terms. The last time was the most peaceful they had been since they met. However, Chen Zhao did not really believe that Rydra would poison him. Of course, he didn't have any evidence to prove this. "That's true." Rydra's face was filled with bitterness. "You said that you didn't poison her, so why were you locked up?" "Because I found a mercury-like substance in the medicine that Ali Rodriguez Alexander usually takes. I also found some refining equipment in my house, as well as some medical purification elements." "What kind of equipment?" "Equipment that I use to refine some chemical elements." "What do you need that for?" Rydra looked up at Chen Zhao. "Don't tell me you don't have that thing in your house." "I do, but I use it to make medicine. You should know my identity." "What's wrong with me having that thing?" "Just like you. I use it for whatever you use it for." "Wait, you changed professions?" Chen Zhao looked at Rydra in surprise. "Yes. In the past year, I've also been an illegal doctor," Rydra said. "And we have the same agent." "Ethan?" "Yes." Rydra nodded. "Even if it's true, I can't prove that you didn't poison her when you called me here. I can't help you. Of course, if you want to reduce your sentence by a few years, I can recommend you a lawyer, but she's very expensive. I hope you can save Ms. Ellie Rodriguez Alexander." "Can she prove your innocence?" "No. Even if she wakes up, she can't prove it." "What's the point?" You still can't get away with it. Ali Rodriguez Alexander treats me very well. I don't want her to die. Also, if she dies, I might be charged with first-degree murder. Which hospital is she in? I don't know. I'll think of a way. It's within my abilities. Thank you. Chen Zhao was about to leave, but he suddenly paused. Do you have any suspects? Rydra lowered her head and thought for a moment. The second day after you came, Ellie Rodriguez Alexander's long-lost grandson came to visit her. His name is Lo Hill, but he gave me a very bad feeling. Maybe I'm thinking too much. I don't have any evidence to prove that he has anything to do with this. For a family member who has been separated for 20 years to suddenly appear at this time, there is a huge problem in itself. Caprice stood outside the door. Seeing Chen Zhao come out, she went up to greet him. Finished? Yes. Chen Zhao nodded. Is she your friend? Chen Zhao thought about it. Friend? She didn't seem like a friend. Sort of. When she first entered the prison, someone tried to kill her. Surprised, Chen Zhao asked who. Every criminal needs my signature when they're sent in, and then they're assigned to different cells according to their crimes. For people like her who haven't been officially sentenced, they're assigned to the outer cells. But when she came in, she was sent to prison without my signature, and she was assigned to a cell for serious criminals with serious violent tendencies. Moreover, the felon actually had a weapon in his hand. Fortunately, this woman seems to have practiced kickboxing. Otherwise, even I would have been dismissed. Help me look after her while she's here, Chen Zhao said. Yes, I will. Chapter 1756. However, there were thousands of hospitals in Los Angeles. Finding someone was like finding a needle in a haystack. Of course, this matter could be said to be difficult, but it could also be said to be easy. It all depended on whether there was a way. Hey, David, help me find someone. A while later, Sharon appeared before Chen Zhao. Why did David send you here? I'll take you to the hospital where Ali Rodriguez Alexander is at. Give me the address. I can go myself. She booked the entire hospital. Can you go in without me? Saran rolled her eyes at Chen Zhao. Fuck, she's crazy. Chen Zhao had heard of booking hotels, planes, and boats, but he'd never heard of booking a hospital. There were many patients coming in and out of the hospital. They couldn't chase all the other patients away just for one person, right? Fine. Sharon brought Chen Zhao to the hospital, Platinum Noble Hospital, just from the hospital's name. Chen Zhao could smell the thick stench of capitalism. Like Chantilly Hospital, it was a private hospital. Private hospitals in America had always been much better than public hospitals. American public hospitals were naturally funded by the government. Because they weren't profit-making organizations, their conditions were naturally bad. Private hospitals, on the other hand, were mainly profit-making. Therefore, there were more investments. The more investments, the higher the fees. But unlike Chantilly Hospital catered to most patients. Anyone could live here as long as they could afford it. But Chantilly Hospital was different. It catered to the rich and powerful. This could be seen from the layout of the buildings and the environment. It wasn't big, but the environment was great. It was halfway up the mountain. Half of it was green, and the other half was built. Chen Zhao could see the bay ahead. Chen Zhao came in Sharon's police car, but when he got out, the security guard scanned him with a metal detector. Sharon couldn't escape the result either. Just then, a young man walked out. Lo Hill had 2 bodyguards beside him. Lo Hill had a faint smile on his face. However, his smile was also somewhat arrogant. In any case, it was very uncomfortable. How may I help you? I'm a police officer. I want to confirm Ms. Ali Rodriguez Alexander's current situation. My grandmother is in a critical condition right now. Ever since she was poisoned, she hasn't woken up. She's currently in the intensive care unit. I don't think she has the ability to meet any guests, let alone answer your questions, Lo Hill said calmly. Even Saran couldn't force her way through, much less force him to cooperate. After all, the Ellie Rodriguez Alexander they were going to meet wasn't the suspect, but the victim. Lohair was the only relative of Ellie Rodriguez Alexander. He now had the authority to decide whether Ellie Rodriguez Alexander would see guests. Sharon looked at Chen Zhao. Smiling, Chen Zhao walked up to Lohair and put his head near Lohair's ear. Your body reeks of a disgusting stench. Lohair's eyelid twitched. He turned to look at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao wasn't just provoking Locker. Rather, it was because he had really abused Lohair, which made him feel disgusted. They were completely different from the elves he knew. The elves had a kind of familiar aura. However, Lohair's aura was completely different. It was disgusting and disgusting. Chen Zhao was very sure that this person wasn't a normal person. However, Chen Zhao didn't feel any magic from him. After getting to know the elf, Chen Zhao knew that his vision was limited. If he didn't have magic, then he was a normal person. Chen Zhao returned to Sharon's side. Let's go. Sharon glanced at Chen Zhao and returned to the police car with him. You're giving up so easily? This isn't like you. What's my personality? Is there something wrong with Lady Ellie Rodriguez Alexander's grandson? Sharon asked. He probably poisoned her, Chen Zhao said, but I don't have evidence. This was the problem in a society ruled by law. Sometimes you knew that there was something wrong with someone, but you still needed evidence. Even if Chen Zhao killed Lohair, Rydra wouldn't be able to get out of prison. Plus, Chen Zhao and Rydra weren't that close. If there really was evidence or some clues, Chen Zhao wouldn't mind helping. But without evidence, Chen Zhao couldn't do anything. Plus, Chen Zhao couldn't even see Ellie Rodriguez Alexander, let alone save her. On the way home, Chen Zhao called Zhang Tianyi. Celestial Master Zhang, it's me, Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao, what's up? I want to ask you something, Chen Zhao said. Do you know any way to make others hate you? Make others hate you? Zhang Tianyi said. I've never heard of such a spell. I can't think of its meaning. If you really want people to hate you, just splash a spoonful of fun on yourself. I guarantee that you'll be hated by everyone. I'm asking you seriously. I'm serious too. Every spell has its own meaning, but I can't think of the meaning of the spell you mentioned, so I can't think of anyone who would develop it, Zhang Tianyi said. In theory, it shouldn't be hard to develop, but what's the value and meaning of it? To make others hate you? Not really, Chen Zhao argued. For example, when a man and a woman break up, this spell seems to be useful. Whatever, I'm not going to bullshit with you. Oh, did Tamamo no Mae appear at the Tokyo Imperial Palace have anything to do with you? You're right if you say it has nothing to do with me. Just say it. What do you mean it has something to do with me? I didn't ask her to go there, but she stole the 3 Japanese divine artifacts to guard against me. Fine. Zhang Tianyi didn't dwell on this. I'm not going to bullshit with you, Chen Zhao said. I'll ask someone else. Since elves were born with the ability to make people feel close to them, perhaps they could find some clues. Chen Zhao planned to ask Lila Gavich and see if they could give him any clues. After hanging up with Zhang Tianyi, he called Lila Gavich. At first, Chen Zhao had some hope, but unfortunately Lila Gavich didn't know anything either. Lila Gavich didn't give Chen Zhao any valuable clues. Wait, why did he investigate Lohill's ability? He didn't need to investigate it at all. Chapter 1757. Chen, what do you think of mine? Very pretty. Chen Zhao's smile was somewhat forced. Fei Lai was going back to work with the coastal rescue team today. Let's go with this. Fei Lai didn't plan on dressing up since she was returning to the coastal rescue team. I'll go move your gift to the coastal rescue team to the car, Chen Zhao said. When Portia arrived, Chen Zhao's family set off for Angel Shore. Little Jerlin leaned against the window, while little Larissa fell asleep in Fei Lai's arms. Little Jerlin had been to Angel's Cove, but little Larissa had never been to where her mother worked. Walter wanted to go back with them and was very excited along the way. When they arrived at Angel Beach, everyone was either carrying or hugging their bags. Felai's back. Everyone in the coastal rescue team was excited. At the headquarters of the rescue team, he watched Felai and the others come over. Robio went up and greeted Felai with a hug. Felai, welcome back. Woof, Walter barked, as if to remind everyone that he had returned. Of course not, Wanda. Robio patted Walter's head. At the same time, he turned around and said to his teammates, "Two of you come and help Chin and the others. They brought you gifts." Several female team members came over to pick up little Jerlin and little Larissa. The male team members helped to carry the gift boxes. The staff members of the coastal rescue team were quite mobile. Chin Zhao realized that a few familiar faces had disappeared, only to be replaced by a few unfamiliar ones. Only people like Robio and Felai, who truly loved this kind of work, would stay in the coastal rescue team. Very, this is for you. Is this Coco's latest bag? I don't think it's available in North America yet. I bought it in Tokyo, Felai said with a smile. Rick, this is for you. Me too. Felai had brought gifts for everyone, including the new members. Everyone knew that Chen Zhao was rich. After all, most of them had been to the Bright Moon Villa before. The grandeur and luxury of the Bright Moon Villa were beyond their imagination. As usual, the female team members winked at Chen Zhao. 2 years had passed, and Chen Zhao hadn't responded to them. Chun Zhao and Robio went into the office to chat. Robio, I released Felai. You have to take good care of her. Don't worry. I won't let any of our team members get hurt. Of course, in Robio's eyes, Felai was one of his generals. Brave, strong, passionate, kind, and unwavering in their pursuit. Of course, he also had excellent athletic ability. These were all essential requirements for a member of the coastal rescue team. Felai was especially outstanding in this aspect. Of course, it didn't mean that the players who resigned didn't have such qualities. Everyone has their own pursuits, even the pressure of family and life. He couldn't ask everyone to do what Robio or Felai wanted. I have one last request, Qinzhao said. What request? I can't arrange night shifts for Felai. Robio was in a difficult position. After all, Felai was also a member of the team. He couldn't treat her differently or give her preferential treatment. That would be unfair to the other members. I'll donate $10 million to the coastal rescue team. You can buy the latest equipment and improve the benefits of the members, even lifeboats. You can also renovate the headquarters and equip it with a rescue helicopter. Robio smiled bitterly. Chen Zhao had made an offer that he couldn't refuse. The coastal rescue team relied on government funding now. Their treatment was average, even lower than regular jobs. Of course, the coastal rescue team accepted donations too. $10 million would be a great help to the coastal rescue team. Fine, that's the only condition. Don't add anything else. Chen Zhao took out the check he'd prepared. This wasn't an idea that Chen Zhao had come up with on the spot. Chen Zhao had thought of this long ago. He hadn't told Felai, but he didn't care if she knew. I'll have to think about how I'm going to tell the other team members. Just say that Felai has to go home to take care of the kids. See, it's a perfect reason. Chen Zhao didn't stay long at the headquarters. A moment later, he left with the 2 kids and Portia. Boss, where are we going next? To the Baroness store in Beverly Hills. I'm going to buy some new clothes for Jerlin and Larissa. Portia cursed the evil capitalists in her heart. Baroness clothes all started at $10,000. Little Jerlin and Larissa were still young, but they already had their own fitting room, which was filled with their new clothes. Reincarnation was indeed a skill. Not many kids in the world could be like them. They'd lived like princesses since they were young. Boss, it's not safe to carry 2 kids in the car. My hands are safer than the baby's seat, Jin Zhao said. Drive properly. They arrived at the Baroness store. Other than selling clothes, they also accepted custom orders. After Chen Zhao took out his membership card, the staff immediately went up to greet them warmly. Chen Zhao could finally put the two kids down. The staff took the two kids, helped the two children customize a few sets of clothes, then show them what they like. The staff's eyes lit up. Chen Zhao completely let go because he felt that any clothes would look good on his kids. So he couldn't provide any effective suggestions or opinions. Just then, a group of people came to the store. The leader was Loher, followed by 4 bodyguards. Portia was puzzled when she saw Lothier. Chen Zhao turned to Portia. What, you know him? I think I know someone, but I think he got the wrong person. Portia shook her head. Loher walked into the store. When he saw Portia, he was also stunned. But he quickly lowered his head and left the store. Chen Zhao immediately noticed Loher's action. He narrowed his eyes. Portia, are you sure you got the wrong person? That person does seem to know you. Strange. If it's him, he shouldn't be so young. Portia was confused. She looked at Loher's back. His back looks similar too. Did he get plastic surgery? Does the person you're talking about look like him? Yes, but his aura seems to have changed. What about his face? Younger. Chapter 1758. Who is he to you? Chen Zhao asked. He's my high school classmate, Portia said. Portia said, but his age obviously doesn't match. He looks a few years younger than I remember. High school classmate? Is that where you went to school in New Orleans? Yes. Who else is in his family? His parents are in New Orleans. Chen Zhao narrowed his eyes. Portia looked at him. Boss, why are you asking? Judging from Chen Zhao's expression, he seemed to be up to no good. Where did he go to university? I don't know. In his last year, he left New Orleans. Apparently, he ran away from home. His parents called the police to find him. Chen Zhao fell into deep thought. Plastic surgery? But what's with that strange feeling of disgust? It wasn't his personal feeling. Rydra felt it too. Why did he run away from home? He colluded with a gang outside the school and sold drugs there. He was discovered and expelled from the school, but he was underage at the time, so the police didn't file a case. Chen Zhao rubbed his chin. If that person wasn't Low Hill, then what about the real Low Hill? Do you know where the owner is? If he didn't move, he should be in the same neighborhood as my parents in. I'll go make a call. Chen Zhao walked out and called Sam and Vicari in New Orleans. Hey, Sam, do you remember me? Mr. Chen? Mr. Chen, right? Yes, it's me. Chen Zhao didn't get straight to the point. Instead, he started talking about family matters. Are you and Vicari still doing street work? No, Mr. Chen. Vicari and I used the $20,000 you left and opened a burrito shop. We feel like we've wasted our 20 years. That's good. Chen Zhao was also very satisfied. Mr. Chen, do you have something for me? I want you to ask about someone for me. Don't worry. I'm not asking you to go back to your old ways. Maddie, I met someone I knew from the past. She recognized me, Low Hill said excitedly. Right now, he was no longer as calm and collected as before. After all, it was the first time and the target was so big. Although Ali Rodriguez Alexander's name was not on the Forbes list, but she was richer than most of the Forbes top 10. If the matter was exposed, even if Ali Rodriguez Alexander was lying in a coffin, there would be a large number of people who could avenge her. I have to kill that woman. Help me. Matey, you have to help me. After a while, a casual voice came from the other end of the phone. Don't worry, I'll help you. Send me her information and where you met her. Loher heaved a long sigh of relief. Someone had investigated New Orleans, but what about the real Lot Hill? Chen Zhao knew nothing about Low Hill. How could he investigate? It seemed like he had to find a chance to meet Rydra. Now that there were clues, there was hope that Rydra could clear her name. Since that was the case, he would help them to the end. At this moment, the shop assistant came over with little Jerlin in her arms. Sir, What do you think of your daughter in this dress? Yes, very good. I'll take this one. Chen Zhao nodded. Chen Zhao spent another few $100,000 here and there. Just then Zola called. Chen, you spent $600,000 in my Beverly Hills branch? Yes, why? It's little Jerlin and Larissa's clothes, right? Yes. Didn't I say that I'll take care of any clothes you and your family need? That's right. This is your shop. Those are old models. It's okay. I'll bring little Jerlin and Larissa to Barron Mansion when I'm free. Okay. Chen Zhao and Portia each carried a child and walked out of the shop. Suddenly, Chen Zhao's shadow vision reacted. Then he threw down the bag in his hand and blocked Portia with his hand. Stunned, Portia looked at Chen Zhao in confusion. Smoke was coming from Chen Zhao's hand. Boss, what are you doing? Chen Zhao clenched his fist and retracted his hand. Nothing. I wanted to do a magic trick for you, but I failed. Boss, you're so childish. Portia was speechless. Ignoring Portia, Chen Zhao looked at the roof of the building in the distance. The sniper immediately put away his sniper rifle and hid behind cover. Damn, who's that guy? The sniper was so scared that he broke out in cold sweat. He was using an anti-material sniper rifle with a 20mm caliber. How powerful was a bullet from a 20mm caliber sniper rifle? If it hit any part of the human body, the force it carried could tear the body apart. Even if it was just a scratch, it would be fatal. If it was shot at a reinforced concrete wall, it could directly penetrate 80 centimeters and leave a bull-sized hole in the wall. This was already more than some small caliber shells could penetrate. But this terrifying power was actually blocked by a single hand. The sniper had never experienced something like this before. He felt like it was a dream. No, I can't stay here. If that person discovers my location, I'm dead. The sniper didn't think that he could fight against a monster who could catch a bullet with one hand. Just then, the sniper suddenly heard a whoosh behind him. The sniper suddenly raised his gun and pointed behind him. He realized that there was a seabird behind him. It was a seagull the size of a pigeon. It was a false alarm. The sniper put down his rifle. But just then, the seagull suddenly pounced at the sniper. Ah! The sniper waved his arms and kept retreating. He wanted to catch the seagull, but he couldn't. The seagull had already scratched the sniper's face into a bloody mess. The sniper kept retreating. Suddenly, he felt something touch the back of his foot. Then, the seagull suddenly bumped into the sniper's forehead. The sniper lost his balance and fell out of the building. Ah! The sniper instantly lost his balance. Thud! Boss, what happened over there? Why do you care so much? Drive home, Chen Zhao said. Boss, did someone say that you're boring? Someone once said that, but I made him go bankrupt. Oh, what did you say just now? Huh, nothing. Portia looked at Chen Zhao in the back seat and cursed him silently. Divine King of the Nine Heavens. Chapter 1759. Damn it. Matey looked at the body on the ground. He'd sent the sniper. But now, the sniper had fallen from the building. It was obvious who did it. Matey immediately called back. Lowhair, the situation has changed. Kill that old woman tonight. We can't delay any longer. But the hospital is full of surveillance cameras, even in the ward. I don't have a chance at all. Lowhair was also nervous. Didn't we plan to wait for the old woman's poison to act up? The doctor already said that her organs are failing and she'll die in 3 days. Why do we have to take the risk? The assassin I sent to kill that woman died. They came prepared. There's someone else behind that woman. If they find out who you are, all our plans will be in vain. Their plan was nothing more than to seize Ellie Rodriguez Alexander's property. Lowhair was the key to this plan. Once his identity was exposed, all the plans would be in vain. You shouldn't have gone out. After 3 days, when that old woman dies, you can do whatever you want. Why do you have to go out now? Then where should I be? In front of that dead old woman in the hospital. Lowhair retorted. You can have fun outside with the money I give you. Why should I stay in the hospital and not go anywhere? All right, the most important thing now is to kill that woman, or directly kill that old woman. I have no choice. If I do anything, I won't be able to escape the hospital surveillance. Lohir had an idea. Do it yourself. Then remove all the bodyguards around that old woman and replace them with our people. Those bodyguards won't listen to me at all. You're the only legal heir now. Why won't they listen to you? If they don't listen to you, just fire them. I'll try. You also think of a way to kill my high school classmate. As long as she's here, I'll be exposed sooner or later. On the way home, Chun Zhao called Risvar. Of all the people Chun Zhao knew, Risvar had the widest connections. Risvar, do you know Ali Rodriguez Alexander? You mean the founder of the United Mall, Ellie Rodriguez Alexander. Yes, that's her. I guess so. What's wrong? She had a grandson by her side, and then she was poisoned and sent to the hospital. Do you know about this? Is that so? Risvar said. I don't know. I'm not familiar with her. I've only seen her a few times at banquets and chatted with her. Can you find out about her grandson's information? The more comprehensive, the better. Sure. Risvar agreed to Chun Zhao's request right away. He didn't beat around the bush at all. He didn't even ask why Chun Zhao wanted to get involved in this. Portia drove in silence. She always felt that Chun Zhao's actions were inexplicable. He didn't do any serious work either. He was either inquiring about this or that. Just then, a large truck that was going against the traffic suddenly crossed the center line and charged toward Chun Zhao's car. Ah! Portia was so scared that she forgot to turn the steering wheel. Looking at the truck, Chun Zhao grabbed the steering wheel. The car swerved at an unbelievable angle and narrowly avoided the truck. Portia stepped on the brakes, and the car stopped by the roadside. Just then, the truck's cargo box suddenly opened. A few gunmen with automatic rifles rushed out of the container and walked toward Chun Zhao's car. Thud! Thud! Ah! Portia screamed in terror. But after a while, Portia realized that she was completely unharmed. The bullets hit the car window and the car, but they didn't go through. Boss, this. Portia turned around and saw Chun Zhao's calm expression. Let me drive. Chun Zhao was very confident in his car's bulletproof function. The car wasn't just modified normally. It had been modified internally by the supernatural organization. Technology and magic made it as strong as an armored car. Even a small caliber cannon couldn't hurt the passengers in the car. Chun Zhao switched seats with Portia. He stepped on the accelerator and turned the steering wheel. He turned around and rammed the car into the gunman. This was the coastal highway. There wouldn't be a single car passing by in an entire day. Portia was scared out of her wits. She thought that Chun Zhao would just drive away. But Chun Zhao didn't. Instead, he turned around and rammed into the gunman. Only one gunman was sent flying. The others all dodged. Chun Zhao's expression remained calm. The gunman hid by the roadside and continued shooting at the car. Chun Zhao turned the car and said to Portia, "Look after little Jerlin and Larissa. Call the police." "Boss, what are you doing?" Chun Zhao twisted his neck. Portia suddenly had a bad feeling. Before she could speak, Chun Zhao had already opened the door and alighted. Then the gunshots outside became even more intense. Portia's face paled. She covered her ears, her face filled with terror. Ah! A scream came from outside. Portia shuddered. Then another scream came from outside. A few seconds later, there was another scream. Help! Help! Ah! The continuous screams terrified Portia. But after the fifth scream, the outside seemed to fall into complete silence. Crack! Portia heard the door open and screamed in fear. "Portia, did you call the police?" Boss. Did you call the police?" "No, boss. Outside. It's fine now," Chun Zhao said calmly. Portia looked up and saw a few people stacked together in the rearview mirror. Portia's face paled. Boss, you killed them all? Portia didn't know how Qin Zhao did it. She was filled with nothing but fear. She never thought that she would be attacked like this. No, no one died. They're all alive, Qin Zhao said nonchalantly. Forget it. I'll call the police myself. Qin Zhao picked up his phone and called David. David, I was attacked by gunmen on the coastal highway. I took them all down. There are 7 of them. 1 is heavily injured and 6 are lightly injured. Qin Zhao's so-called lightly injured referred to the few who had their hands broken. The heavily injured ones were run over by Qin Zhao. Chapter 1760. Angel Coast. Are you sure nothing will happen to Qin taking care of 2 kids by himself? Qin can solve any problem. I trust him, Fei Lai said in a trusting tone. Okay, I hope nothing will happen to him, Robio said. Oh, you know that Qin is going to donate to the coastal rescue team, right? No, Fei Lai didn't really care, but she also knew that Qin Zhao's goal was to make her life better. When Portia got out of the car, her legs were weak. She went to the shooters. The gunmen were indeed not dead, but their hands were all twisted and deformed. They were piled up by Qin Zhao in layers. Screams could be heard. Portia looked at Qin Zhao. He was standing in front of the car, holding little Jerlin and Larissa. The car was full of bullet holes, but none of them penetrated the car. Portia was really scared to death. She didn't even see how Qin Zhao had killed the 6 shooters. In any case, it didn't take long before they heard screams coming from outside. Every time, she thought that Qin Zhao had been shot. In the end, Qin Zhao was fine. Instead, the 6 shooters were all beaten to the ground. Just then, police sirens sounded. Police cars arrived one after another. David and Sharon got out of the car and looked at the shooters on the ground. Qin, are you okay? David was still worried about Qin Zhao. Sharon looked at the shooters and then at Qin Zhao's car. Good thing you didn't drive a convertible, Sharon said. How did you kill them? Ask them yourself. Qin Zhao handed the 2 kids to Portia. Then he pulled Portia and David. David, come here for a second. What is it? Seeing Qin Zhao's mysterious look, David couldn't help but regret it. If he knew, he wouldn't have led the team himself. When he heard that Qin Zhao had been shot, he came here in fear. He only realized when he got here. His worry was completely unnecessary. He could tell from the shooters' pitiful looks. Qin Zhao definitely wouldn't be the one injured. It would be the shooters. Judging from Qin Zhao's expression, he was probably going to do something difficult for her again. Do me a favor, David asked. It's nothing. Qin Zhao smiled at David. It can't be a small matter for you to ask me for help. David looked at him warily. What are you guys talking about? So secretive. Sharon moved closer to the 2. Fuck off. Don't eavesdrop on us. Qin Zhao pushed Sharon away, but Sharon was determined not to leave. She felt that staying with Qin Zhao was more interesting. She had been a police officer for so long, but she had never encountered such an exciting gunfight. Maybe they could get into another thrilling gunfight if they stayed with Qin Zhao. If Sharon didn't leave, Qin Zhao wouldn't speak. Qin, just tell the captain. I won't leak it, Sharon promised. But whatever you're going to do, you have to bring me along. Qin Zhao didn't speak. David glanced at Qin Zhao. Tell me, it's not your first day with Sharon. This isn't legal, Qin Zhao said. Are you sure you want me to tell you? Is it related to the gunman? Sharon asked. Yes. Qin Zhao nodded. Tell us what it is first, David said seriously. Then we'll decide if we should help you or not. Qin Zhao looked around. Finally, he decided to speak. Police sirens could be heard outside Platinum Noble Hospital. As soon as Lohir heard the sirens, he was frightened. Then a bodyguard ran in. Boss, a few police officers are looking for you. Can't you just tell them that I'm not here? Just then, David, Sharon, Qin Zhao, and Portia walked over with their chests puffed out. Mr. Jeff Ryder, You're under arrest for poisoning, fraud, and murder for hire." David took out an arrest warrant. "This is the arrest warrant." Lohir's face was drained of blood. No, more accurately, he was called Jeff Ryder. Jeff Ryder's mind went blank when he saw Portia behind David. Suddenly, Jeff's mind went blank. He turned around and ran. Everyone chased after him. Jeff charged into a ward. When they rushed into the ward, Jeff Ryder was pointing a gun at Ellie Rodriguez Alexander on the bed. "Get out, all of you, or I'll shoot. If you don't want this old woman to die, get out." Jeff stared at everyone with bloodshot eyes. "Jeff Ryder, you can't run. Put the gun down." To be honest, neither Chin Zhao nor David expected this. Jeff Ryder was so useless that he'd run away after taking out the arrest warrant. In Chen Zhao's original plan, David and Sharon needed to send Jeff Ryder to the police station and then slowly trick him into talking. In the end, he'd self-destructed so easily. Based on his current actions, Chin Zhao was sure that his guess was correct. He'd brought Portia here to let Jeff know that his identity had been exposed. Portia still didn't understand what was going on. "Jeff Ryder, you can't run." Chen Zhao strolled into the room with a faint smile on his face. Get out, get out. Don't come in. Get out." As if he hadn't heard Jeff, Chin Zhao stood before the bed and looked at him. "I told you, you can't run." How could Jeff Ryder not know? But he didn't want to give up just like that. He wasn't satisfied either. His fortune was already within reach. But in the blink of an eye, he'd lost everything. Suddenly, Jeff Ryder turned to Portia. "It's all your fault. You bitch, it's all your—" Jeff suddenly pointed his gun at Portia. Portia's mind went blank for a moment. But the moment Jeff raised his gun, Chen Zhao had already reached Jeff. Chen Zhao was already in front of Jeff Ryder. His gun was raised. Bang! Portia saw a bullet hole in the wall behind her. She'd almost fallen to the ground. "Ah!" Chen Zhao directly broke Jeff's arm. "David, wait for me outside for a few minutes," Chen Zhao said and tossed Jeff to the door. "Okay, hurry up." "Help Portia too. Her legs are a bit weak. Too bad there's no gunfight." Sharon had come to this because she'd hoped for an intense gunfight. Unfortunately, things didn't go as planned. Nothing happened. Chapter 1761. Ellie Rodriguez Alexander's condition was more serious than he had imagined. Her internal organs were all failing. Chen Zhao first cut off the surveillance. Then he poured a bottle of perfect crystal potion. Next, he pulled up Ellie's palm and injected some immortal power into it. He used brute force to force out the poison. He couldn't wait for the slow process. It could be said that Ellie Rodriguez Alexander could die at any time. So they could either endure it or be killed by Chen Zhao's immortal power. Chen Zhao poured her a bottle of perfect crystal potion to keep her alive. Large amounts of black poison started seeping out of Ellie's skin. Immortal power was good, but it didn't mean everyone could handle it. Seeing that it was enough, Chen Zhao packed up and left. David saw Chen Zhao come out. "How is it?" "Looks like that Ellie Rodriguez Alexander is lucky. She probably won't die." Chen Zhao glanced at Jeff Ryder. "Are you disappointed? Don't lie to me. That old woman is dead for sure. The doctor already announced her death date." "Idiot." Sharon glanced at Jeff Ryder. "What good does Ellie Rodriguez Alexander's death do for you? If she's not dead, at least you won't be sentenced to death. If she's dead, you're dead for sure." "He's not actually stupid," Chen Zhao said. "Do you think that Ellie Rodriguez Alexander will let him go after she wakes up? He also killed Allie's grandson and impersonated her. No matter how you look at it, he's dead for sure." Instantly, Jeff's face turned ashen. Yes, no matter how you looked at it, Jeff was dead for sure. After pushing Jeff into the police car, everyone left. But before long, Chen Zhao suddenly spoke. "Sharon, the gunfight you've been waiting for is almost here." David glanced at the rearview mirror. He didn't see anything wrong. Chin, is there someone following us? There's something wrong with the white MPV and the big truck. I'll call for backup, David said. Drive to the outskirts. Why? These people are either here to save him or to kill him. Pointing at Jeff Ryder, Chen Zhao said, and from the looks of it, they won't stop until they get what they want. Do you want to fight them in the city? Are you confident? Feel I should be off work now, Chen Zhao said. I'm in a hurry to go home too. I'll take the coastal road. It's on the way. Everyone in the car was speechless. David asked again, Are you sure there's no problem? Shalon had already taken out her gun, checking that it was loaded and loaded. There was some excitement on her face, as well as a trace of fear, but it was well concealed. Boss, I want a raise or I'll resign. Portia wanted to cry. It clearly had nothing to do with him. So why was he involved in this gunfight? Okay, when you hand me your resignation letter, remember to include your repayment plan. Portia's face was covered in tears. When the car reached the coastal highway, there were no other cars along the way. David asked, Do we need to stop? No need. Chen Zhao suddenly opened the car door and disappeared into the night. Seeing Chen Zhao jump out of the car at a high speed, Portia went crazy. Shalon was also shocked. Chin will be fine, right? Captain, how fast are you going? 100 miles per hour. Boom! Just then, there was a huge sound from behind. The white SUV that had been following them all the way suddenly rolled over and landed on the road. The truck quickly braked and stopped. The people in the driver's and co-driver's seats were about to get out, but Chen Zhao knocked them out with a metal pipe. Then he quickly went to the back of the truck, strung the metal pipe together and bent it. Bang, bang, bang. The people in the truck kept knocking on the door, but they couldn't come out at all. Just then, David's police car arrived before Chen Zhao. It's over, Chen Zhao said. Remember to let me know if you get anything from them. Shalon was furious. It was rare for her to have a gunfight. In the end, Chen Zhao cut the Gordian knot. She didn't even understand what had happened. Chen Zhao had already taken care of everything. Chen, how did you take care of the white SUV? Shalon asked, confused. Chen Zhao clearly didn't have a gun, and he couldn't charge into a speeding car. So, Shalon didn't understand how Chen Zhao had flipped the car. I used a rock to knock out the driver of the SUV, Chen Zhao said matter-of-factly. I think I smashed his head. Shalon and David were speechless. They'd thought that it would be a tough battle. In the end, Chen Zhao took care of it so easily. Portia knew that her boss was strong and good at fighting. After all, Chen Zhao had already proven it during the day. He could easily take care of a few armed killers. But this time, it was even more exaggerated. It was like he was playing. The police backup is here, right? They're already on their way. Clearly, Jeff Ryder wasn't the only one behind this. He definitely had a team behind him. However, Chen Zhao wasn't interested in who the mastermind was. Chen Zhao was more interested in where Jeff Ryder's disgusting feeling came from. He hoped that Risfar's investigation would help him figure it out. Of course, the most direct way was to find out from Jeff Ryder himself. But Jeff Ryder was dead for sure. So, they definitely wouldn't cooperate with the police. Ring, ring. The alarm in the ICU rang loudly. More than a dozen doctors and nurses rushed to the intensive care unit. However, when they arrived at the ICU, they found that Ellie Rodriguez Alexander was already sitting on the bed. All the medical staff looked at Ellie Rodriguez Alexander in disbelief. How was it possible? Wasn't she going to die? How could she suddenly wake up? Was this her final radiance before death? It might really be her final radiance before death. After all, they knew very well how serious Ellie Rodriguez Alexander's condition was. Ellie Rodriguez Alexander slowly looked at the doctors and nurses blocking the door. Who can tell me what happened? Where am I now? Ms. Alexander, you're in Platinum Noble Hospital. 9 heavens, Divine Emperor.